Chapter 95. In the morning, as soon as Xiaofan walked out of the door, he saw Lang Jie running towards him, out of breath. "Xian, go to the river. Quick!" Lang Ga's face was red, not sure if it was because he was too tired, or because he was too excited. "What's wrong?" Xiaofan was confused. "Fish fence. Fish fence." Lang Jie did not say much, but pulled Xiaofan and ran towards the river. Early in the morning, Lang Jie went to the riverside to check on the fish fences. Based on his experience in the past few years, he certainly knew that there would be a big wave by the river last night, and thought that maybe something would be trapped there. But in the past 2 days, no one came to Xiaofan because they were not calm. Today, when he couldn't wait to check the fish fence, he found that there were many aquatic creatures in the fish fence. Not only the big-headed piranhas, but also many other creatures that he had never seen before. At that time, Lang Jie was so excited that he checked the fish fences one by one. Later, he asked some patrolling soldiers to help him kill the fish that had almost escaped from the fish fences, but the fish trapped in the fish fences hadn't been killed yet. Because of his excitement, he only paid attention to the creatures in the fish fences. Lang Jie did not remember until now, so he immediately went to find Xiaofan. Last night, the river rose again and returned to its original state, as if the abyss 2 days ago was just an illusion. When Xiaofan came to the river, there were many people around the fish fence. Some of them were warriors who were responsible for patrolling the river bank, and some were people who came from the Mountain Foot district to check out the situation. The children in the orphan cave were also craning their necks. People were curious, and they loved to watch the fun. At the same time, they also knew that as long as they set up such a fence at the right time, many good things could be stopped. When Xiaofan came over, he saw a 1-meter-long clam, which had been pried open and chopped into pieces and put aside. "I met that this morning, and it almost escaped. Fortunately, it didn't run very fast." Lang Jie chuckled. "That thing's shell is really tight. It took me a lot of effort to pry it open." After pushing the crowd away, Lang Jie excitedly pointed at a fish fence and said to Xiaofan, "Xian, look, there are a lot of preys here. A lot of prey that I've never seen before." As a hunter who had hunted for more than 10 years, Lang Jie was naturally just like the other warriors. He was interested in many new prey and had already started to dissect some in the morning. Xiaofan jumped onto a stone pillar of a fish fence and glanced around. There was something in every fish fence, and most of them were big-headed piranhas, which were all lifted up by the waves. Lang Jie was not interested in those big-headed piranhas, so he only kept 2 of them as a token. After discussing with Xiaofan, he gave the rest to the people from the Mountain Foot district and the children in the orphan cave. After all, Lang Jie was not short of food, and he didn't care about this kind of fish. Xiaofan didn't need it either. Lang Jie held the long spear and poked the piranhas out of the fish fence one by one. Every time the spear went down, a fish would be pierced through. With a flick of the spearhead, the piranhas would be picked out and thrown aside. The onlookers only wanted to see if the fish were back. If they were back, they could continue to fish in the following days. They didn't expect that they could also get some benefits from watching the fun. When they saw Lang Jie throw the fish aside, they all rushed up to grab them. There was no water in the fish fence, and there were many dead fish inside. They all killed each other. The blood that flowed out when Xiaofan poked the fish made the fish fight even more fiercely. Xiaofan saw many strange fish. Some had long and narrow eyes, some had flat bodies like manta rays, and some were like pufferfish, which swelled into a big ball and pushed the other fish to the side. Xiaofan even saw some shrimps and crabs, but they looked different from the shrimps and crabs he saw in his previous life. They were not as big as the other fish. Well, even if there were big shrimps and crabs, the fish fences couldn't trap them. Even if they were here yesterday, they would have already run away. How about this one? I think it's edible. Hey, this one is good. It looks fierce. Even if it's not edible, take it out and play with it. Look at that fish, it changed color with a poke. There were many onlookers around. Xiaofan was watching when he heard Lang Jie shout, I think I've seen this one before when I was hunting, but it didn't look like this. Xiaofan looked over, and when he saw the creature Lang Jie was talking about, he was immediately amused. Oh, there's a turtle. To be exact, it looked more like a snapping turtle. When Xiaofan looked over, it was biting the tail of a piranha next to it, directly tearing off a large piece of meat from the tail. Xiaofan pointed at the snapping turtle with his spear and said to Lang Jie, keep that for me, I'll cook it when I get back. Okay, I'll keep it for you. Lang Jie was overjoyed by the day's harvest, and he didn't care at all about this thing that he seemed to have seen before. He didn't care whether the fish he caught in the fish fence could be eaten or how much energy they could provide. He just felt a sense of accomplishment when he was surrounded by so many people, just like when he was walking on the path of glory for the first time. See, besides setting ground bows, I also know how to set traps to catch fish. Lang Jie was instructing people to run errands, and many people from the Mountain Foot district came to Lang Jie to learn from him. Lang Jie, who was standing on the stone pillar of the fish fence, had not stopped talking since he came here. Xiaofan looked around, and he didn't want to steal the limelight from Lang Ga. Although these prey were shared by him and Lang Jie, he just wanted to see what other creatures there were in the river besides the piranhas. Xiaofan let Lang Jie deal with the rest of the things in the fish fence, except for the turtle and a few fish. Xiaofan squeezed out of the crowd and walked along the river bank. In a small forest near the river bank, many branches were broken, which should have been caused by last night. When the river rose, there should be big waves, and the river bank was obviously washed away, so the things in the fish fence might have been blown away by the waves. There were no broken branches on the shore, nor were there any floating objects on the river. Xiaofan walked to the forest, broke off a branch, and threw it into the river. The branch floated on the river, rising and falling with the waves. But after only one breath, the branch sank, and after a short while, a series of bubbles rose up, like burps after a full meal. Those wood-eating insects also came back. During the rainy season, those insects might have followed the river beasts downstream, or like the long-tailed frogs, they had other places to go. But after the full moon, the river rose, and they came back. If his speculation was correct, Xiaofan felt that if there was a boat between the end of the rainy season and the full moon, they might be able to safely row in the river. During that time, the river seemed to be very turbulent, but it was only the big-headed piranhas that were active. This was the so-called, when the tiger is absent, the monkey is king. Without many natural enemies, it was no wonder that the piranhas were so active during that time, and could fight for a long time with just a little bit of blood. Xiaofan could not confirm whether the truth was as he speculated. Unfortunately, this was only once a year. If he wanted to confirm it again, he could only wait until next year's rainy season. Back in the wooden house, Xiaofan wrote down today's observations and his own speculation in a secret notebook. After writing, he carefully rolled up the animal skin roll, tied it with a leather rope, and put it in a stone box. After sealing it, he moved the stone box to the corner under the bed. There were many things recorded in the animal skin roll, and Xiaofan could not let other people in the tribe know about it. The information inside could cause panic, and could also bring more unnecessary trouble. Now Xiaofan's ability was limited, and he could not bear the possible consequences, so he could only hide it. I hope one day I can use it. Xiaofan whispered. Was there only such a tribe in the world? Today, the people in the tribe, as well as their predecessors, had only come into contact with people in their own tribe. They had never seen other tribes. When they talked about other tribes, it was like people in his previous life talking about aliens. They were too distant, and only existed in legends, but they had never come into contact with them. Where were the others? Who were they? Xiaofan could see some of them from the murals in the stone room in the cave. But how could he meet people from other tribes? Maybe he had to go further through the dangerous forest, or maybe he just had to cross the river at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 96. After everything in the tribe returned to normal, Xiaofan's life also returned to its original routine. Every 20 to 30 days, he would go out to hunt, then return to the tribe to make stoneware, learn how to make traps from old Ku, and train Caesar and Cha-Cha. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year had passed. During this time, Xiaofan expanded his wooden house. Under old Ku's guidance, he added stone to make a wooden house, which was more solid than the original one. In terms of construction, Xiaofan was indeed not as good as old Ku and the others, so all he could do was to follow old Ku's guidance. The newly built wooden house was twice as big as old Ku's house. There was also a workshop for making stoneware. Old Ku's equipment had already been moved in. While Xiaofan was making stoneware, old Ku was sleeping in the room next door. He did not mind the noise and would wake up to instruct Xiaofan. When Xiaofan went out to hunt, old Ku would sit by the window and bask in the sun in his spare time besides making stoneware and helping to train Caesar and Cha-Cha. Every time Gu came over and saw old Ku's comfortable appearance, he felt very emotional. A year ago, who would have thought that old Ku's life would change like this? Cha-Cha grew very fast. It had been half a year since it hatched. The weak chick that could be held in one's hand was already almost as tall as Xiaofan's shoulder when it raised its head. The previous wooden house was too small, so Caesar and Cha-Cha wanted to tear it down whenever they made a fuss. Therefore, during the expansion this time, Xiaofan specially built 2 nests, one for the bird's nest and the other for the wolf's nest. Caesar's wolf's nest was near the gate, so Xiaofan was completely raising it like a dog. As for Cha-Cha's nest, it was specially built on the roof of the house. With Cha-Cha, the night swallow would not come close to the house at night. Sometimes in the morning, Cha-Cha would wake up and find several night swallow corpses next to its nest. It did not eat. After pecking the night swallow to pieces, it would fly to the river to feed the fish. Then it would watch the big-headed piranhas fight over it. It was not only cruel, it also had a bad taste. Xiaofan always thought that the baby bird needed external help to learn how to fly, such as pushing it down from a high place. But in fact, Xiaofan did not need to worry about it at all. Cha-Cha was restless when it first opened its eyes. When it could walk, it was even more troublesome. It often jumped off the stone table. By the time Xiaofan realized what was going on, it could already fly very well. Moreover, it flew everywhere all day long, always provoking Caesar, chasing and pecking. When it saw that Caesar was serious, it would immediately fly high, which made Caesar so angry that he could only dig the ground. Once, when Xiaofan came back from a hunt, he was summoned by the shaman. When he brought Cha-Cha to the shaman, he met Chief Ao, who was talking to the shaman. Ao said that Cha-Cha might be a bird similar to the giant mountain eagle. From what he said, it might be a close relative. Although it was not as big as the giant mountain eagle, it was still a bird of prey. Compared to other birds, it was still bigger. When Xiaofan heard this, his first thought was, damn, no wonder it could eat so much. When it was a baby bird, it had a big appetite and was picky about its food. Now that it had grown up and could fly, it mostly relied on Xiaofan to raise it. Occasionally, it would find some snacks to eat, because Xiaofan did not let it go too far. As for what the giant mountain eagle looked like, Xiaofan had never seen it before. Most people in the tribe had never seen it before. It was said that there was an eagle mountain far away, where the giant mountain eagle lived. Xiaofan did not know what kind of bird Cha-Cha was, so he could only speculate based on what Ao said about the giant mountain eagle. If it was really a close relative, there must be some similarities. It was said that the giant mountain eagle was cold-blooded and cruel. Even if it was related by blood, it would still fight. However, when it came to fighting for territory, it would not fight to the death. As for birds or other birds that were not related by blood, it would fight until the end. After it won, it would try its best to kill the opponent. From what Xiaofan observed, the Cha-Cha was really close to the giant mountain eagle. Their personalities were similar. The good thing was, because it had been tamed since it was young, it was much more restrained. You found a good stone core again? Old Ku stood by the window and asked, and he saw Xiaofan come back from the training ground with 2 big stones. Yes, it feels good. I can make some spear darts. The fine stone leaves can also be made into stone needles for setting traps. After putting the 2 stones in the grinding workshop and drinking some water, Xiaofan heard a few birds chirping in the sky outside. Walking out of the door, Xiaofan looked at the birds circling in the sky above his head. He raised his hand and made a gesture. The birds chirped and flew away. Cha-Cha is going out to play again? Old Ku asked. Yes. Fortunately, it knows not to fly too far. It will come back when it's time. Xiaofan said as he entered the house and sat down. It's still young. After it leaves the territory of the tribe, there will be many fierce birds in the sky. Cha-Cha is no match for them. Old Ku was a little worried. Don't worry. It's very smart. Xiaofan said. He was not lying. Cha-Cha did have many tricks up its sleeves. It was much smarter than Caesar and rarely suffered losses. Looking at Caesar, who came back from the training ground with Xiaofan, Old Ku was silent for a while. Then he asked, You've trained Caesar so well. Do you want to take it out in the future? Xiaofan nodded and said, I want to take it hunting next year. Are you really going to take Caesar? Old Ku was not sure. Although Caesar had been trained better and better by Xiaofan in the past year, and had learned how to cooperate with him, there were too many unpredictable factors in the real hunting ground. Any one of them could cause irreversible effects. It's just a plan. I heard from Uncle Mai that we might need to hunt some difficult prey next year. I suggested it to Uncle Mai, and he said he would think about it. But we have to let Caesar show off in front of them. Although Caesar could make the decisions in the hunting group, and the others would not directly refute him even if they had different opinions, Xiaofan still wanted everyone to know about Caesar's ability. It would be a pity to not use such a helper. After hunting with the group for so many times, Xiaofan also knew that some special prey were not easy to hunt. But with Caesar, who had a keen sense of smell, the result would be different. Now Caesar had no problem in speed, but Xiaofan was still training its reflexes and adaptability. Caesar was about the size of a wolf in the forest, but it did not have a murderous aura. No one in the tribe was afraid of it now. Since Xiaofan had already made his decision, Old Ku did not intend to interfere. Even if you don't train it well now, you'll have more time to train it in the winter when the hunting stops. Winter, Xiaofan looked at a few ordinary-looking leaves on the wooden shelf, and said, I can't be idle in the winter. He wanted to learn some knowledge about herbs from the shaman, and he had mentioned it when the shaman talked to him alone. He did not know if this skill could be taught, so he only tentatively and euphemistically mentioned it once, and the shaman agreed. Many people in the advance group knew about the use of herbs, but they did not know much about it. The other people in the tribe did not seem to have mentioned similar problems. They probably thought that as long as they believed in the shaman, they could ask the shaman for help when they needed. They did not need to spend time to learn. Or, they thought that only the shaman could learn such profound skills, and no one else could do it. When Xiaofan proposed to learn about herbs, the shaman was very happy. However, Xiaofan did not have much time on weekdays, so the shaman asked him to go up the mountain in the winter when the hunting stopped. Therefore, Xiaofan said that winter would be busy too. Chapter 97. With the end of the last hunting trip, the temperature gradually dropped. Xiaofan dragged his last prey of the year down from the top of the mountain. The weather was getting colder. Winter would come in about 30 days. They put some food in the tribe's ice cave, and brought the rest down the mountain. The other hunting team was ready to go out, so they had to hurry up. When they came back, winter would officially come. Old Ku met his friends on the mountain, and Caesar stayed there to carry him down the mountain. As for Cha-Cha, Xiaofan saw it flying in the sky when he returned to the tribe. After the sword cleansing ceremony, it was nowhere to be seen. As soon as Xiaofan entered the house, he saw an eagle lying on the stone table. The eagle's head was hanging on the edge of the table, motionless. Xiaofan was so scared that he thought the eagle's head was broken. Fortunately, the eagle quickly turned over and jumped down from the stone table. When it flapped its wings, several wooden chairs around it were knocked over. Even after growing up, Cha-Cha still retained his childhood habits. Whenever he had nothing to do, he would lie on the stone table and throw everything on the table to the ground. Xiaofan whipped him several times, but he still didn't change. Looking at the eagle squeezing over, Xiaofan cut a piece of meat and threw it over, "Go out and eat." Even though the house had been expanded, it could not bear the eagle flapping its wings in the house. After Cha-Cha left with the meat in its mouth, Xiaofan planned to process the meat and marinate it. He looked at the stone jar in the kitchen and found it was full. The kitchen was a room specially set aside by Xiaofan. There was a simple stone stove in it, which was more convenient than a stone pot. Xiaofan remembered there was an empty stone jar in the corner, so he walked over to take a look. There was an old stone vat, which was brought here by old Ku. It was quite old, and the mouth of the vat was cracked. It could not hold much water, so it was put here temporarily to store something else. There was a wooden lid on top of the stone vat. It had not been touched for some time, so it was covered with a layer of dust. Xiaofan opened the wooden lid and looked inside. He saw a creature the size of a wash basin sitting quietly inside. There were many jagged thorns on its back. The water in the stone tank only slightly covered its back. Seeing it, Xiaofan remembered. This turtle was caught in the fish fence during the high tide of the 2 moons. Xiaofan asked Lang Jie to keep it for him to stew. Later, when Lang Jie brought it over, Xiaofan directly threw it into the stone vat in old Ku's house. Later on, due to hunting, building a house, moving, and a series of other things, it was put aside. Xiaofan had almost forgotten about it, and old Ku had not eaten it either. It had been put aside until now. It was already the end of the year. Almost half a year had passed, but it had not starved to death. Probably because it was starving, it did not have much energy. Xiaofan poked it twice with a wooden stick, but it only moved a little. Should I stew it today? Xiaofan thought. Just as he was thinking about whether to stew it today or a few days later, old Ku came back with Caesar. Seeing old Ku come in, Xiaofan asked, "Do you think we should eat it today or a few days later?" "Oh. It's still here," old Ku said in surprise. When Lang Jie sent the turtle over, he did not say that Xiaofan wanted to kill it and eat it. In addition, Caesar and Cha-Cha were in front of him, so old Ku thought that Xiaofan wanted to keep it for fun. After all, he already had 2, so it would not be strange to have one more. Therefore, after old Ku put it in the stone vat, he only added some water to it from time to time, and threw some meat scraps into it when he was free. He thought that Xiaofan would care about it, but he didn't know that Xiaofan had already forgotten about it. Later, after the house was expanded and moved over, old Ku asked about the turtle again. Only then did he know that Xiaofan had no intention of keeping it. He only kept it as food, so he did not continue to feed it. There was a difference in treatment between food and pets. In the past, Old Ku thought that pets were just spare food. Later, after spending a long time with Caesar and Cha-Cha, he developed some feelings for them. Every day, Caesar would carry him everywhere, so naturally, he did not want to let Caesar starve. However, food was different. In the minds of the tribesmen, since it was food, why should they waste food to feed it? He put it aside until now. Yes, this was caught when the river rose after the full moon. I asked Lang Jie to cook it for me, but I forgot about it when I got busy. Xiaofan said. I haven't fed it for a long time, but it's still alive. Old Ku sighed. After all, they did not lack food. They did not even finish the food in the previous stone vats, so they did not pay attention to the stone vat in the corner. This kind of creature can withstand hunger, has a long life, and does not die easily. Xiaofan said as he threw a piece of freshly cut meat into the vat. The originally listless turtle immediately bit the meat. When it bit the meat with its eagle beak, because it used too much force, it pecked the wall of the stone vat, making a dong sound. Xiaofan looked at the inner wall of the stone vat and found that there were all kinds of scratches and bite marks. If it was not for the thickness of the stone vat, it would have been pecked through. Perhaps, most of the cracks on the stone vat were due to the turtle. Why don't we eat it today? Xiaofan turned to ask Old Ku, but found that Old Ku was staring at the turtle in the stone vat, thinking about something. Xian. Old Ku stared at the turtle and said. What? Didn't you say that you wanted to go to the mountain to learn from the shaman in winter? Old Ku asked. That's my plan, and the shaman agreed. Xiaofan said. You can offer it to the shaman. Old Ku raised his finger and pointed at the turtle in the stone vat that was active again after eating the meat. Offer it to the shaman? The shaman did not lack food, so why would he care about this? But soon, Xiaofan also reacted. Old Ku thought that the turtle had a good meaning. Just like what Xiaofan said, longevity and immortality. Xiaofan did not know what the turtle meant here, but in his previous life, many people did regard the turtle as a symbol of longevity and immortality. Moreover, this turtle really had a strong vitality. After leaving it here for so long, it was so hungry that it did not even have the strength to peck at the vat. Otherwise, such a stone vat would not be able to trap it. Thinking about it, when he caught it, the Lang Jie tortured the prey trapped in the fish fence for a while. Later, when he brought it here, he starved it for a long time. For nearly half a year, it did not eat much, but it still stubbornly survived. This made Old Ku believe in the meaning of longevity and immortality that Xiaofan said. People in the tribe always thought that things with good meanings should be offered to people they respected. Old Ku was one of them. In addition, Xiaofan wanted to learn from the shaman, which was a kind of honor in his eyes. It was natural to offer this turtle that symbolized longevity and immortality to the shaman. Seeing that Old Ku was so insistent, Xiaofan did not force him to eat it. After all, he was not short of food. Okay, next time I go up the mountain to find the shaman, I will bring it with me. Xiaofan answered. Hearing this, Old Ku smiled. Before that, you have to take good care of it. Old Ku thought that the things offered to the shaman must be in the best condition, or they would not be able to show their sincerity. So, after 10 days of good food and drinks, Xiaofan held the turtle's back with both hands, and lifted it up the mountain with its belly facing out. On the mountain. The shaman was sitting in the stone house, writing something on a roll of animal skin with a brush made from animal hair. When he heard that Xiaofan came to offer food, he was curious. After all, Xiaofan's hunting team had returned to the tribe for so many days. What could they offer now? Putting down the brush, the shaman raised his head and was about to say something, when he saw the turtle in Xiaoxian's hand. The shaman's old face twitched, and he swallowed back the words he was about to say. In the past, when other people in the tribe came to offer food, they would cut the meat and clean it up. However, when it came to Xiaoxian, he directly brought a turtle over. It was still alive. This turtle had a hooked beak, and there were bits of wood around its mouth. Obviously, this turtle was very destructive. When it was brought in by Xiaoxian, it had a murderous look on its face, as if it wanted to bite everything it saw. Sorry, this is the last chapter for tonight. I will update earlier tomorrow, and will continue to update on the weekend. Chapter 98. What are you? The shamaness looked at Xiaoxian. She didn't know what to say. He hadn't received a living creature for many years. It's for you. Xiaoxian put the tortoise on the ground next to him. After thinking for a while, he put it upside down. Every time the tortoise was about to turn over, he would push it back with his hand. I brought it here and asked when I can start learning herbs from you. Xiaoxian said. The shaman looked away from the tortoise, thought for a while, and said, You go up the mountain in 10 days. During this time, he still had some things to deal with and several paintings to draw, so he couldn't spare any time. Okay, I'll come back in 10 days. Seeing that the shaman still had a lot of empty animal skins to draw on, Xiaoxian knew that the shaman had a lot of things to do, so he didn't say anything more. He bowed and left. As for the tortoise, the shaman had someone watching over it, so it couldn't hurt anyone. After Xiaoxian left, the shaman quietly looked at the tortoise that had turned over on the ground next to him. The tortoise used to be murderous, but now it wasn't as aggressive as it was in Xiaoxian's house. It just opened its beak slightly, looking at the shaman, but didn't bite him. After staring at the tortoise for a while, the shaman called in the guard outside, and asked him to move the tortoise to another place. When Xiaoxian returned home, old Ku was waiting at the door, looking very nervous. People in the tribe cared about the shaman very much, and old Ku also wanted to know if the shaman would be satisfied with the offerings. How is it? Does the shaman like it? Before Xiaoxian entered the door, old Ku hurriedly asked. He grabbed the crutch so hard that his blue veins bulged, and the crutch almost broke. Xiaoxian recalled the shaman's expression at that time and said, he should be satisfied. The shaman asked me to go up the mountain in 10 days. Hearing Xiaoxian's words, old Ku breathed a sigh of relief. Since the shaman had asked Xiaoxian to go to the mountain, it meant that he wasn't dissatisfied. In fact, Xiaoxian felt that old Ku's worries were unnecessary. After interacting with the shaman for a long time, Xiaoxian could tell that the shaman was not an inflexible old antique. He would not change his attitude towards people just because he liked the gifts offered. Since you will go up the mountain in 10 days, before that, you can go to the hunting group to learn more about herbs and plants. By then, you can satisfy the shaman. Old Ku wanted to go to some of his former comrades, but most of the people he knew who knew about herbs and plants were in another hunting group, and had already gone out. When the hunting group came back, Xiaoxian had already gone up the mountain. Generally speaking, in a year, the activity of the wild beasts in the forest would be in a wave shape, and would reach its peak during the full moon period. After the full moon period, the activity of the wild beasts in the forest would gradually decrease. At the end of the year, some of the prey would hide and prepare for hibernation. In order to ensure enough food in the winter, the hunting team would go out for hunting longer than before and after the full moon period. Therefore, even after 20 days, the hunting team might not come back immediately. After Xiaoxian went up the mountain, he would have to wait for another 3 or 4 days for the hunting team to come back. If there were other troubles, it might take longer. I can't help you with herbs. Old Ku could not remember the knowledge about herbs that he had learned in the past. He was afraid that he would embarrass Xiaoxian in front of the shaman if he taught him the wrong things. After all, he was the shaman. However, Xiaofan was not as nervous and anxious as old Ku. He did what he should do, such as making stoneware, taking Caesar and Cha-Cha to the training ground, and practicing the traps and lassos that he had just learned. In this season, many trees on the hills of the training ground bore fruits. Many people went to pick them, and many fruits took a short time to ripen. One day, they looked like peanut-sized green fruits, but the next day, they would be as big as apples, and their color would change. If they were not picked at this time, the fruit would rot in a day. Therefore, many people went to the training ground to pick fruits every day, but most of them were from the Mountain Foot district. After all, they had less food, and it was always good to have more food. Finally, the day came. Before Xiaofan went up the mountain again, old Ku reminded him again and again not to make the shaman angry. What a great honor it was to learn from the shaman. No matter what he thought, Xiaofan nodded seriously, "Don't worry." Old Ku was speechless. Old Ku was relieved at first, but when he heard Xiaofan's words, he became worried again. Looking at Xiaofan's back, old Ku stood there, worried. Xiaofan did not bring Caesar up the mountain, but Cha-Cha followed them all the way to the top. When they came to the stone house where the shaman talked to people, Xiaofan saw the two soldiers in charge of guarding the house staring at the sky. The two soldiers naturally knew the eagle hovering in the sky. After all, it was brought to the shaman when it was very young, and it was blessed by the shaman, so no one dared to throw it to kill it. Xiaofan made a gesture to the sky, and Cha-Cha chirped and flew back down the mountain. It was not the first time that the two soldiers saw Xiaofan do this, but every time they saw it, they could not help but be surprised and envious. They had never thought that a bird that was so aggressive in the forest could be so obedient. Because of this, their attitude towards Xiaofan was much better than the people who lived at the foot of the mountain. When they saw Xiaofan coming, they would smile every time. Except for the first few times, Xiaofan did not need to show his pattern plate now. He could walk directly into the house, and no one would stop him. The shaman was still arranging the animal skin rolls. Xiaofan only glanced at them in a hurry, but he could not understand them. They seemed to be drawings, but they were too abstract. They were much simpler than the drawings on the animal skin rolls in other people's hands, and the murals in the cave. They looked like symbols, each with only 1 or 2 strokes, but the shaman drew each stroke very slowly, as if it took a lot of effort to complete each stroke. Xiaofan did not disturb him, and sat down on the side. After about 5 minutes, the shaman put down the brush, took a deep breath, and looked at Xiaofan with a faint smile. "I have already told Guizhe. You can go directly to the medicine house. She will tell you what to do." Xiaofan did not know who Guizhe was, but he probably was the shaman's apprentice. Looking at the shaman's current situation, he could not leave. He had only drawn a third of the animal skin roll, and it was not good to stop halfway. Xiaofan understood that the shaman could not leave now. "Okay, then I will go first," Xiaofan said. The medicine house was where the shaman used to mix herbs. Among the many houses near the top of the mountain, there were 4 at the top. They were the stone house where the shaman summoned people, the stone house where the chief summoned people, the stone house where the higher-ups of the tribe met people, and the medicine house. These 4 houses were in 4 directions. If 2 opposite stone houses were connected, they would form a crisscrossing 10. It was said that these 4 houses were connected to the fire pit, and could be used as a greenhouse in winter. As for how to connect them, that was the power of the shaman and the fire seed. On normal days, except for the seriously ill, and the wounded sent by the hunting team, no one else was allowed to get close to the medicine house. Xiaofan only knew the specific location of the medicine house, but he had never entered it. There was also a guard in front of the medicine house. After Xiaofan handed over the patterned plate, the guard let him in. Obviously, the shaman had already informed him. He could smell the herbs from far away, and the smell was even stronger when he got closer. Xiaoxian lifted the animal skin curtain of the medicine house and walked in. What came into view was a large square stone table placed there. At this moment, a little girl who didn't look very old was busy in front of the square table. The sleeves of the beast skin coat she was wearing only reached her elbows, and the beast skin pants she was wearing did not reach her ankles. At this moment, she was barefooted, walking on the uneven but carefully hammered ground. She walked along the stone table, handling the herbs that were placed all over the table. Behind her, a turtle, which Xiaoxian was very familiar with, was slowly following her. Every step she took, the turtle followed her. Chapter 99. Xiaoxian put down the animal skin curtain and said, "Hello, my name is Xian. The shaman asked me to come here to learn." The person who was processing the herbs on the stone plate raised her head and looked at Xiaoxian. She smiled and said, "I'm Guizhe." Although she had a smile on her face, Xiaoxian didn't think she was friendly or malicious. She was just like the shamaness, smiling faintly at everyone. She looked friendly, but that was just a facade. She was really taught by the shaman. Even her smile was the same. Compared to other people who had awakened their totemic power, Guizhe was relatively thin and weak. After all, in the tribe, no matter if it was a boy or a girl, after awakening their totemic power, their physique would be strengthened a lot, and they would look stronger. The temperature in the room was a little higher than outside. Just like what people in the tribe said, this room was connected to the fire pit. Xiaoxian did not know how the heat was transmitted. After all, there were no suspicious objects around the room. Walking to the stone table, Xiaoxian asked, "What do I need to do first?" Putting down the stone plate in his hand, Guizhe thought for a while, and said, "You can watch from the side and see what I'm going to do." Okay. Xiaoxian had no objection. He wanted to observe first. He still did not know how to process the herbs here. The plants here were too strange, but similar to what Xiaoxian learned in his previous life, most of these medicinal plants needed to be selected and processed. Some parts of the same plant could be used to save people, while some could be used to poison others. Up to now, Xiaoxian only knew a few basic ways to use the herbs he saw when he went out with the hunting team. He also learned a little about harvesting when he followed the advance group. For example, when was the best time to harvest, which plants could be harvested from the ground, which needed to be uprooted, and some could only be harvested when flowering. As for now, the first thing he needed to know was how to select the plants after they were delivered here. Guizhe was doing the same thing now, and he had already processed more than half of the plants. After all, it had been 20 days since the last hunting team came back, and the plants that could not be kept for a long time had already been processed, and the plants that could be kept for a long time were processed last. Xiaoxian walked over and stood beside Guizhe, watching her every step carefully. When the turtle saw Xiaoxian approaching, it bit Xiaoxian's leg. Xiaoxian's line of sight had been fixed on Guizhe's actions as he processed the herbs. He did not look at the tortoise, but his hanging hand moved quickly. He drew out his stone knife and slapped the back of the knife at the tortoise's beak that looked like an eagle's hook. "Pa!" The tortoise shook its head after being slapped. It still looked at Xiaoxian with disdain. It probably remembered how Xiaoxian treated it in the past. But then, to Xiaoxian's surprise, the tortoise did not bite him again. It was completely different from when they were in the stone vat at the foot of the mountain, when it could not wait to kill a target as soon as it saw one. Xiaoxian did not understand. Why did the tortoise, which used to love biting people, settle down when it came here? Was it because of the witch? He did not understand. Anyway, the tortoise did not pester and bite people anymore, which saved Xiaoxian a lot of trouble. It was almost winter, and the temperature had dropped a little. If he used the standard of pet tortoises in his previous life, the tortoise's appetite and activity should have been greatly reduced. But now, this weird-looking tortoise with even weirder attributes had completely overturned Xiaoxian's previous understanding of it. The tortoise looked energetic, much livelier than when it was thrown into the water vat by Xiaoxian 10 days ago. Although it did not crawl fast, the tortoise's steps were domineering. Few of the new plants brought back by the hunting team can be eaten directly. Most of them have dirt and other impurities in them. Guizhe explained some basic knowledge to Xiaoxian when he was processing the herbs in the stone plate. Newly brought back plants had a lot of dirt and other impurities in them, and some of them also had a high water content. If they were not processed in time, they would also go through qualitative changes. Maybe they would grow moldy like ordinary plants, or maybe they would go through other changes. Therefore, the plants brought back by the advance group were directly sent here, and the medicine house would immediately process the ones that were most likely to go through qualitative changes. After the initial washing of the plants, we need to remove the dirt and sort them out. Then we need to remove the non-medicinal parts. For example, the outer shell of this fruit must be removed. Its outer shell can make people have diarrhea. Guizhe said. Obviously, this kind of fruit was very poisonous. It could make people in the tribe, who were physically strong, suffer from severe diarrhea and even urinate and defecate. Even warriors could not stand it. Xiaoxian watched Guizhe skillfully cut open the hard outer shell of the fruit with a sharpened stone knife. He peeled off the outer shell of the fruit with long hairs like whiskers, but the translucent and solidified flesh inside was not damaged at all. Obviously, Guizhe was very familiar with this kind of treatment. Xiaoxian wanted to ask what to do with the poisonous outer shell of the fruit, but before he could ask, he saw Guizhe throw the outer shell into the tortoise's open mouth. Xiaoxian was speechless. What the hell? Wasn't it poisonous? One threw it away calmly, while the other could not wait to eat it. Xiaoxian was stunned. Did the shaman send the tortoise here just to be a lab rat? Or a trash can to dispose of waste? Guizhe did not notice Xiaoxian's strange behavior. Because she wanted to demonstrate to Xiaoxian, she did not continue to deal with the same thing. Instead, she walked to another stone plate and picked up a plant that looked like a withered leaf. She continued, not every kind of fruit needs to be removed like the fruit. For example, you need to remove the stalk. The stalk will make people's hands and feet numb. Xiaoxian watched as she skillfully peeled off the stalk, then threw all the peeled leaves into the tortoise's mouth again. Xiaoxian was speechless. Looking at the tortoise chewing with its beak, Xiaoxian thought to himself, severe diarrhea? Hands and feet numb? It's all fed to the tortoise. Moreover, the tortoise was fine after eating it. These are all harmful. Why are you still feeding it? Xiaoxian asked. When he gave the tortoise to the shaman, he thought that the shaman would stew it directly. He did not expect it to be sent here, and it was so obedient. What surprised Xiaoxian the most was that Guizhe actually cut off the parts of the plant that were identified as harmful to people and fed them to the tortoise. The tortoise even ate it, big mouthfuls. The shaman said that you can try to feed it some. Guizhe did not feel that there was anything wrong. Since the shaman said it, it must be correct. She just had to carry it out. Sure enough, it was an undead species. Xiaoxian had a new understanding of the strange species in this place. He followed Guizhe around the stone table. After looking at the preliminary treatment methods for many kinds of plants, Guizhe continued with her task. After looking for a while, Xiaoxian asked, "Is there any relevant information, such as animal skin scrolls? I can take a look first." After all, the advance group had spent a lot of effort to find these plants. They couldn't let a newbie like Xiaoxian operate them. Even if the steps were very simple, they couldn't let him operate them. Unless the shamaness agreed, Guizhe couldn't make this decision. Xiaoxian could not help even if he wanted to. Guizhe thought about it and felt that it was right. She also began to read the drawings and related records on the animal skin scrolls very early. After she understood the basic knowledge, she began to learn from the shaman. However, compared to Xiaofan, she had someone to explain to her when she read the animal skin scrolls. She was willing to explain to Xiaofan, but unfortunately, there were still a lot of plants that had not been processed. Guizhe pointed to a small stone table in the corner where there were many animal skin scrolls. She said, "They are all over there. You can read them. Then I will go first. You can continue. I will ask you later if I don't understand." Xiaofan came to the stone table. Some of the animal skin scrolls on the table looked old, but the one on the side was relatively new. It should have been made this year. Xiaofan first took a slightly old animal skin scroll and opened it to have a look. There were several drawings of plants, and there was a brief description next to them. However, it was not detailed, and the drawings were not detailed. How to identify them? In the eyes of a layman, looking at these drawings, more than 4 out of 10 would feel that they looked the same. Weren't they all leaves, roots, barks, seeds and so on? They all looked the same. There was only one color, the drawing style was rough, and the annotations were too thin. There was no real object to compare with, and no one to explain. Just by looking at these animal skin scrolls, one could not understand much. After flipping through a few old animal skin scrolls, Xiaofan found that they were all similar in style. Then he set his eyes on the newer one. The quality of the animal skin scroll looked much better than the other scrolls. After opening the slightly new animal skin scroll and seeing the contents, Xiaofan was stunned. If the previous scrolls were rough, then the drawings on this one were extremely simple. Just like the symbols drawn by the shaman today, no one could understand what these drawings were. Staring at a drawing that looked like a blob of ink, Xiaofan wondered if this was a lump of paint that fell from the shaman's brush when he was drawing. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Xiaofan seemed to see a round brown fruit gradually emerge from the drawing. Chapter 100. Xiaofan was startled. He moved his eyes away and looked at the animal skin roll again. It was still the same symbols. However, when he stared at the ink blob for a while, the brown fruit appeared again. It was very clear, as if a real object was placed in front of his eyes. Even the wrinkles on the fruit's skin could not be seen in detail. What was going on? In the past, Xiaofan would only see those illusionary pictures in front of his eyes when he was in danger or in a special environment. But now, he was not in danger, and he did not encounter any special terrain like the green thief. He was just staying in this medicine house. If the illusionary pictures were because of this special place, why did they only appear now after so long? This animal skin roll was not ordinary. Xiaofan no longer stared at the ink blob. Instead, he changed the picture and continued to stare at it. Soon, Xiaofan found that the other pictures were similar to the ink blob. After staring for a while, a picture of a real object would gradually appear on the drawings. It was very clear. Xiaofan saw a lot of herbs in this animal skin roll. Among them were the wind ball and the green thief that he had found when he went out with the advance group this year. There were also many other strange-looking herbs. What surprised Xiaofan the most was that the wind ball and the green thief had some traces because of the traps. Xiaofan had set up the traps himself and caught these 2 herbs. Naturally, he could recognize them at a glance. The pictures in this animal skin roll were exactly the same as the ones in Xiaofan's memory. They were the real objects reproduced. Looking at the other pictures, there were not only pictures of plants, but also of animals. On this animal skin scroll, the first half of the scroll was drawn with plant medicinal materials, while the second half was drawn with animal medicinal materials. However, no matter which type it was, there was only a simple symbol, and there was no description of how to obtain these finished products. There were many animal herbs. Xiaofan could only see the shape of the finished products, but he could not tell which part of which animal these finished products were. The annotations on the side were limited, so it was impossible to understand it in detail. Xiaofan flipped through the rest of the animal skin scrolls on the stone table. Except for the one in his hand, the rest of the animal skin scrolls were very ordinary. It could be seen that the artist had tried his best to draw the objects as clearly as possible, but his drawing skills were limited. Xiaofan could not see the images of the objects in these drawings. Compared to the reproduction of the objects, the difference was huge. Xiaofan recalled the time when he went to the shaman's place and saw the shaman's drawings. At first glance, those drawings looked very simple, but every stroke seemed to be extremely difficult. Now, thinking about the animal skin scroll in his hand, Xiaofan had a guess in his heart. When Guizhe finished processing the herbs in a stone plate, Xiaofan took the special animal skin scroll and asked, "Was this scroll written by the shaman himself?" Guizhe looked sideways and saw the animal skin scroll in Xiaofan's hand. Her originally calm face suddenly became nervous. She quickly walked over and looked carefully. After confirming that the animal skin scroll was not damaged, she breathed a sigh of relief. She originally wanted to take the animal skin scroll from Xiaofan's hand and put it away to avoid any damage. However, thinking that the shaman had personally agreed to let Xiaofan come to learn, she hesitated for a moment and withdrew her hand. This is indeed written by the shaman himself. This is the one he wrote this year. You. Be careful when you read it. Don't break it. Guizhe stared at the animal skin scroll in Xiaofan's hand and said seriously, "Every time the shaman comes, he will look through it. If he breaks it, he will be angry." Xiaofan naturally knew how important the shaman was to the people in the tribe. Nodding, Xiaofan replied, "I know. I will be careful. By the way, have you read this too?" Xiaofan raised the animal skin scroll in his hand and asked. Guizhe heard this and smiled. Her eyes were filled with unconcealed reverence. She said, "This was written by the shaman himself. Only he can read it. No one else can understand it." She thought that Xiaofan was the same as her, who couldn't understand what was written on the animal skin roll. She had seen similar animal skin rolls when she first entered the medicine house. However, she heard that this kind of animal skin roll belonged to the shaman volume, which was completely different from ordinary animal skin rolls. Wu roll. Only the shaman can understand it. So, if you can't understand this, you should change to other animal skin scrolls. After saying this, Guizhe went back to the big stone table to process the herbs. There were still several stone plates on the table that needed to be processed. Moreover, the hunting team would be back soon, so the herbs needed to be mixed as soon as possible. She did not have much time to talk to Xiaofan. After Guizhe left, Xiaofan looked down at the animal skin scroll in his hand and whispered, "Wu roll?" Guizhe misunderstood him, but he did not explain. It was even more impossible for him to say to Guizhe, "Ah, I'm sorry, but I can understand it." Wu roll. Only the shaman can understand it. Who said that? Xiaofan shook his head and moved a wooden chair over. He spread the animal skin scroll on the small stone table and continued to look at the drawings. He had only roughly glanced at a few of them, and there were many others that he had not seen yet. Even if the annotations were not clear, he could at least remember them. Maybe he would encounter them when he went hunting in the future. Since it was called Wu roll, it must be because of the shaman. The drawings made by the shaman were different from those made by others. The shaman might have used some special ability to draw his consciousness into the drawings. Even though the drawings looked simple, there were many secrets hidden in them. If anyone could understand these drawings, why would Ta and the other hunters have other drawings? The drawings in the hands of the two hunting team leaders were of course drawn separately, so that they could be understood. Xiaofan left the medicine house in the afternoon. He could not spend the night there. Not long after Xiaofan left, the shaman came to the medicine house. Hearing Guizhe respectfully report the results of the processing of the herbs in the afternoon, the shaman smiled and said, "Very good. Thank you for your hard work." The old man and the young man had the same expression on their faces, but Guizhe's face was filled with joy because of the shaman's compliment. After asking about the herbs, the shaman asked again, "How was Xian's performance today?" "I taught him how to process the herbs, and then he was reading the animal skin scroll." Guizhe briefly told the shaman what had happened today, and pointed to the small stone table. "He also looked at your animal skin scroll. I guess he was just like me, confused." The shaman's expression changed slightly, but it was too fast for Guizhe to notice. "How long did he look at that animal skin scroll?" asked the shaman. "Almost half a day. He even yawned." Guizhe did not say the second part, for he was afraid that the shaman would be angry. The shaman was silent for a while, and then said slowly, "Don't mind him. You go about your business. The hunting team will be back soon. Prepare 3 portions of the herbs we need." "Yes." The next day, Xiaofan came to the medicine house again. Guizhe was still busy at the big stone table. Xiaofan stood aside and watched him for a while. He helped to move things down, and read the preliminary processing methods of some new herbs. After reading all of them, he turned to other places. When he glanced at the small stone table where the animal skin scroll was placed, he paused. He found that there was another animal skin scroll on the table. Judging from the quality of the animal skin scroll, it was very similar to the one from the Wu roll yesterday. Xiaofan picked up the new animal skin scroll and opened it. What came into his eyes was indeed the same as the one from the Wu roll yesterday. However, this animal skin scroll did not contain a single image, but a series of images. What was recorded on this animal skin scroll was the processing methods for 8 commonly used medicinal plants. From selecting, cutting, steaming, drying, and storing, there were all descriptions. Looking at these pictures, Xiaofan felt as if he was looking at a pair of experienced hands, demonstrating a series of processes in front of him. After a series of rune images, there were also annotations. The images and the words were very clear and profound. Chapter 101. Not only that day, but every day after that, every time Xiaofan went up the mountain to the medicine house, he would find a new set of Wu roll on the small stone table in the corner. From the beginning of the collection and processing of the basic plants, to how to lure the animal herbs, how to capture them, how to process them, and how to collect and prepare the rare herbs. All of these were recorded on the animal skin roll in the form of Wu roll. Every time Xiaofan looked at it, he could see the real scenes. Because the pictures were all continuous, instead of separate ones, when he looked at them together, he could see different scenes. Sometimes Xiaofan even had a feeling that he was doing it himself. He could feel the touch, the strength, and so on more or less. The Wu roll was very precious. Since the shaman took it out, obviously, he already knew that Xiaofan could understand it. The shaman. Many things could not be hidden from him. And the extra Wu roll on the stone table made Xiaofan understand the shaman's attitude. One day, when Xiaofan was looking at a Wu roll in the corner, someone ran in and said, "Guizhe, the hunting team is back. The shaman wants you to go there." There was a room next to the medicine house, which was used to treat the wounded. Every time the hunting team sent the wounded back, they would directly send them there. It was close to the medicine house, so they could just go there and get whatever herbs they needed, saving time. The Guizhe did not waste any time. He put down what he was doing and went there. As for Xiaofan, he was not allowed to go in. Without permission, no one was allowed to go in case they would interfere with the treatment. Xiaofan felt a little regretful. He wanted to see how the shaman treated the wounded, but he was stopped, so he could only sit in the medicine house. Guizhe went out for a while and ran back to the medicine house. She took a few packets of medicine that had already been wrapped. Half a minute later, she hurriedly ran back. Bitter sand root, 7 forks, palmer fruit, heart-piercing stem. Guizhe murmured the names of the herbs as she took out some herbs from the stone jars or wooden boxes that contained the finished products. Seeing her in such a hurry, Xiaofan guessed that the number of wounded warriors sent by the hunting team was more than expected, and the herbs she had prepared were not ready. The herbs she had just taken were not enough, so she had to make some on the spot. There was no need for a scale. Guizhe only needed to casually grab it with his hand, and the dosage of the same medicine was almost the same. This was the conclusion that Xiaofan had come to after watching from the sidelines for the past few days. This kind of kung fu was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Perhaps the shaman had been training Guizhe since a long time ago. Everyone in the tribe thought that the medicine in the bag was made by the shaman himself, but now it seemed that many of them were made by the Guizhe. "Do you need help?" Xiaofan asked. Guizhe was going to refuse, but after thinking for a while, he nodded. However, he did not let Xiaofan deal with the herbs directly, but only asked him to pass the things to man. What happened? Not enough medicine? How many people were injured this time? Xiaofan asked. 9 were injured. Guizhe said. Those who were sent back were naturally heavily injured. 9 heavily injured people were indeed more than the usual number of injured people. However, fortunately, no one died. The heart-piercing stem is not enough. Help me bring the box with the heart-piercing stem. Guizhe said hurriedly. Okay. Xiaofan had already memorized the locations of the herbs, so he did not need to be reminded by Guizhe. He went to bring a big wooden box. The heart-piercing stem was a kind of herb that grew on the green land. It was only as thick as a little finger, with a thin layer of skin on the outside. There was a thin black thread-like core in the center of the stem. The skin could not be used as medicine, and the black core in the middle was poisonous. Therefore, when dealing with the heart-piercing stem, in addition to peeling off the skin, the black core in the middle also had to be removed. Although he was in a hurry, Guizhe's movements were still orderly. However, he was still too slow. The heart-piercing stem was not easy to deal with, and it was very time-consuming. Xiaofan had seen her deal with it, and each stem took at least half an hour. Because of this, Guizhe was so anxious that his face was sweating. He held the knife steadily and faster, but it was not as perfect as usual. After all, he was going to save people now. He would rather spend more medicine to deal with the heart-piercing stem as soon as possible and bring it to the shaman. The heart-piercing stem was generally used to treat internal injuries that were beyond the warrior's self-healing range. Such injuries were extremely dangerous, so they had to be treated immediately after they were sent back. The medicine had to be prepared immediately. Every minute delay would increase the danger. Seeing that there were still several heart-piercing stem in the wooden box, Xiaofan reached out and took one. He gently pinched the stem of the heart-piercing stem from the bottom to the top, along the spiral. Don't mess. Guizhe noticed Xiaofan's movements and was about to tell Xiaofan not to mess with the herbs. After all, he was a greenhorn. However, when he turned his head and saw the scene in front of him, he held back his words. After Xiaofan quickly finished pinching, he held the heart-piercing stem that was half an arm long in one hand and a small stone knife in the other. Xiaofan specially polished the knife with a piece of high-quality stone, and the stone was sent to him by the shaman in the first half of the year because of Xiaofan's meritorious service. It was not big, after all, high-quality stone was extremely difficult to find. After polishing some small stone tools, Xiaofan kept the rest of the stone. When he saw the small stone knife Guizhe used to peel the bark on the first day, he went back and polished one himself. High-quality stone was not easy to polish, so it took him a few days to finish. He just brought it with him today and didn't expect to use it. The knife flashed several times. After several times, Xiaofan withdrew the knife and pulled the heart-piercing stem from the top to the other side like peeling a banana. It was very smooth. It was completely different from when Guizhe peeled the heart-piercing stem. Guizhe even forgot what he was doing. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Xiaofan's movements. When the skin was pulled close to the end, according to Guizhe's usual practice, he should use the stone knife to directly cut off the skin and part of the end. As for the inner core, he usually cut it vertically from the middle and carefully dug it out bit by bit. However, Xiaofan didn't do that. Instead, when he got close to the end, he pinched the end and twisted it gently. Then, he pulled out a thin black inner core along with the end. Guizhe, the expression on his face was already frozen. It wasn't that she hadn't tried before. It was because she had tried that she knew how difficult it was to pull out the inner core like this. However, in front of her, a newbie who didn't know anything did it so easily, as if he had practiced it thousands of times. The whole set of movements was smooth and without any pause. In fact, Xiaofan wasn't too sure why he could do it so perfectly for the first time. It was like a kind of instinct. It wasn't Xiaofan's own instinct, but after watching the Wu roll, it was like a kind of instinctive consciousness. When he was operating, it seemed that someone was telling him how to do it, how to use force, and how to pull. The whole set of movements almost completely copied the scene of the string of runes about the heart-piercing stem that appeared on the animal skin roll. Because of Xiaofan's participation, the medicine was quickly prepared. Guizhe took the medicine and ran over, leaving Xiaofan and the turtle in the medicine house. About 2 hours later, the shaman came over, looking tired. Guizhe stayed there to take care of the wounded, and didn't go back to the medicine house with the shaman. When the shaman came in, Xiaofan was feeding the turtle with the medicine waste. "How's it going over there?" Xiaofan asked and handed a glass of water to him. The shaman sat on the wooden chair and took 2 sips of water. He calmed down and said, "It's fine. That means that there is no danger." Xiaofan continued to feed the turtle with the waste. The shaman stared at Xiaofan. Guizhe had already said that Xiaofan dealt with the heart-piercing stem. He was not too surprised. He glanced at the stone table in the corner and the animal skin roll on the table. He opened his mouth and said, "Xian. What? Do you want to be a shaman?" "I don't want to." Chapter 102. If it were other people in the tribe, they would be thrilled to hear the shaman's words, but the one sitting here was Xiaofan. The shaman had expected that Xiaofan would refuse, but he didn't expect it to be so straightforward. The shaman had been looking for a successor for a long time. As the spiritual leader of the tribe, the shaman had to choose the right successor. Therefore, the recent generations of the shaman had spent a lot of effort on the selection of successors. When Gigu was still young, he was chosen by the shaman. The shaman planned to train him from a young age, so he was named Gigu. The name Gigu came from the blessing incantation, "Water returns to its gully." It was obvious that the shaman had high expectations for Gigu. Unfortunately, the shaman was studying some newly found herbs at that time, so he forgot to keep an eye on Gigu. When he came back to his senses, he found that Gigu was already on his way to becoming a warrior, pursuing the peak of power, and never looking back. Gigu respected the shaman as much as the others in the tribe. If anyone said something bad about the shaman, he would fight back. But, since he was young, his biggest goal was to become a powerful warrior. The shaman didn't get angry with Gigu, but he began to reflect. The main idea of the tribe was to become a powerful warrior, and they were very persistent in the pursuit of power. Those who were forced couldn't become a qualified shaman. The successor had to be willing to do so. After Gigu, the shaman began to pay attention to other people in the tribe. Because everyone wanted to become a warrior, the shaman wanted to choose from those who couldn't awaken. If they couldn't awaken, would they be willing to be a shaman wholeheartedly? It didn't matter whether they could awaken their totemic power or not, as long as they met the requirements, they would be able to inherit the power from the shaman. As for the original power, it didn't have much effect after becoming a shaman, because the shaman couldn't go out of the tribe. Nothing could happen to the shaman. No one could guarantee that nothing would happen to him after he left the tribe. Therefore, generally speaking, the shaman of the tribe would not leave the tribe after he took over the responsibilities of the previous shaman. No one in the tribe would let the shaman get involved in danger. If the leader was gone, they could choose another powerful one, but not the shaman. Every shaman would be chosen very early on, and once they were chosen, they would teach them by example. This was a tradition. As for the requirements for the candidates, no one could say for sure. It was completely up to the shaman to decide. Among the generations of shamans, there were men, women, warriors, and people who had never awakened their totemic powers. Therefore, whether or not one could awaken their totemic powers was not the deciding factor. However, after more than 20 years after Gigu, the shaman still couldn't find a suitable candidate. Occasionally, he would go down the mountain to see the other children in the Mountain Foot district, but every time, he would return disappointed. Until one day, Gigu came with his newborn daughter, and asked the shaman to give her a name. The moment the shaman saw the baby in Gigu's arms, he had another idea. He named the baby Guizhe, which was also derived from the blessing spell. The soil belongs to the house, the water belongs to the ravine, the insects don't work, the grass belongs to the pond. Therefore, from a very young age, Guizhe was trained as the next shaman. At that time, only a few people living on the mountain top knew about it. However, the shaman didn't expect to see Xiaofan again. Since Xiaofan awakened, he acted differently from the others. Since then, the shaman really began to pay attention to him. Moreover, after that, many things changed his view of Xiaofan again and again. If the reason why Xiaofan improved faster than the others was because of his talent, then what about Xiaofan's ability to see things that others couldn't, and his ability to recover faster than intermediate totemic warriors? Now, he could even see Wu roll. Why did he have such power? In fact, the shaman didn't know, but he believed that it was because of the fire seed. The fire seed in the tribe was incomplete, but since Xiaofan awakened, it was more like the awakening of a complete fire seed. But at the same time, he had some abilities similar to the shaman's, which allowed him to see things that other warriors couldn't. When the shaman took over, he would pass on his abilities to the next shaman. However, Xiaofan didn't get the inheritance, but he already had similar abilities. Could it be that he was the descendant of the previous shaman? It didn't make sense. When the shaman retired, he would pass on his abilities to the next shaman. The shaman wouldn't be so selfish, and his loyalty was unquestionable. Moreover, after flipping through several population registration scrolls, the shaman confirmed that Xian's ancestors were indeed ordinary warriors in the tribe. Until now, the shaman hadn't found the exact answer, but he didn't care about it. He planned to persuade Xiaofan to take over the position of shaman, but he didn't expect to be rejected so directly. "You really don't want to?" The shaman asked again, which was rare. Xiaofan looked at the shaman, but didn't say anything. He was different from the natives. His thoughts, ideas, principles, and so on were all very different. How could he take over the position? But he couldn't say these. Fine. The shaman sighed, and didn't continue with this topic. Instead, he asked, "Have you read those animal skin scrolls?" "Yes." "Do you understand?" "Yes." "Xian, do you want to see more Wu roll?" The shaman asked. Yes. Xiaofan was very curious about many things recorded in the Wu Roll. At the same time, he guessed that some of the more ancient Wu Roll might contain more secrets of the tribe. If he wanted to know more about the tribe, he could only start from the shaman. And the Wu Roll was an excellent history book. I can show you more Wu Roll. The shaman said slowly. Xiaofan didn't say anything, but waited for the shaman's next words. The shaman raised his head, glanced at the stone table with the herbs, and continued, I hope you can help Guizhe. Of course. Even if the shaman didn't say it, Xiaofan would teach Guizhe what he knew. Helping others was also helping himself. The bags of herbs that were given before the hunt were all prepared by Guizhe. Xiaofan was naturally happy to help Guizhe increase his efficiency. The shaman nodded with satisfaction. After all, he was old and had a lot of things to do. He wanted to teach Guizhe, but he didn't have the ability. It was impossible for him to teach Guizhe everything. It was also impossible for him to teach her every method of handling medicinal herbs. Guizhe's knowledge of medicinal herbs was, in fact, learned from others. For example, if he had time to teach Guizhe the heart-piercing stem, perhaps Guizhe would master it faster. But the shaman always thought that maybe when Guizhe took over the shaman's responsibility, he would inherit the shaman's knowledge and understand the Wu Roll. What he spent more time teaching Guizhe was temperament, attitude, worldview, and some things related to the overall situation of the tribe. These were the most important things. And now Xiaofan's performance could solve this problem very well. Although it was inevitable that he felt a little regretful, the shaman was still satisfied. After chatting with Xiaofan about the herbs on the Wu Roll, the shaman got up and was about to leave. Before leaving, the shaman said to Xiaofan, from tomorrow onwards, come to my place in the morning. Some Wu Roll can't be brought here. Come to the medicine house in the afternoon. Okay. Xiaofan replied and bowed to the shaman seriously. Guizhe didn't go back to the medicine house. Xiaofan had nothing to do, so he processed all the unprocessed herbs on the stone table. It was only the preliminary processing, so it wasn't difficult. The processing steps of these herbs were all recorded on the Wu Roll. These days, he also saw how Guizhe processed them, so he knew some of the problems that needed to be paid attention to. Like the heart-piercing stem, Guizhe processed them skillfully. When he left the medicine house and went down the mountain, Xiaofan looked up at the sky. Cha-Cha was hovering in the sky above his head. The world is so big. Do you want to go out and see it with your own eyes? Xiaofan whispered. Soil in its own house, water in its own gully, insects don't work, grass and trees in its own pond. This sentence came from the ancient ballad Wax, which was borrowed here. Chapter 103. The next day, Xiaofan came to the shaman's stone house early in the morning. The shaman gave him an animal skin roll that described the methods of collecting and processing 10 kinds of rare animal herbs. Xiaofan thought that the shaman would only let him read the Wu Roll for herbs, but he didn't expect the shaman to ask, have you read it? Yes, if I can meet those animals, I am confident that I can get all the herbs. Xiaofan answered. Yes. The shaman didn't comment, and then said to the guard at the door, if it's not urgent, don't come in. Seeing the shaman's attitude, Xiaofan also became serious. It seemed that the shaman had something important to say. Sit here. The shaman pointed to a short table next to him, and then took out an unwritten animal skin roll and a stone plate that contained the shaman's special paint. This array, Xiaofan roughly understood what he meant. Do you know how the Wu Roll is drawn? The shaman asked. No. Xiaofan was a little confused. Wasn't the Wu Roll made by the shaman alone? Seeing the confusion in Xiaofan's eyes, the shaman said slowly, the power of the totem is not only one kind of power. Body and spirit, becoming a warrior is the strengthening of the body. The other kind exists in everyone's body, but it's not much. What's the other kind? Xiaoxian asked. The power of inheritance, the inheritance of spiritual consciousness. The shaman said. Every shaman would inherit a large amount of power from the previous shaman. Since you can understand the Wu role, I believe that you are different from others. You should have more power of inheritance than others. The shaman said. The power of inheritance. How do you understand it? Xiaoxian asked. The shaman looked at Xiaoxian, raised his pine bark-like finger, and pointed at Xiaoxian's forehead. Ask the totem, and you will get the answer. Xiaoxian closed his eyes and felt the totem in his mind. The two horns were surrounded by dancing flames, and nothing else could be seen. Just as Xiaoxian was puzzled, the shaman's voice rang in his ears. Look carefully. Xiaoxian continued to observe the totem, down to the details. Suddenly, Xiaoxian felt something and looked at the bottom of the flames, at the faint blue flames. There was more than one layer of flames. Xiaoxian opened his eyes and asked tentatively, blue? The shaman nodded his head in satisfaction. As for where Xiaoxian's power of inheritance came from, the shaman didn't know and didn't want to find out. How many? The shaman asked. Xiaoxian looked at the brush beside him, then looked at the shaman and asked, May I? The shaman handed over a thin brush. In Xiaoxian's eyes, the brush wasn't exquisite, and it wasn't easy to use. It wasn't as good as a carbonized tree branch. However, it wasn't the right time to find a carbonized tree branch, so he could use this brush to draw a rough picture. Xiaoxian drew a rough picture of the totem on the empty animal skin roll in front of him. The shaman looked at Xiaoxian's drawing, and his smile deepened. Not bad, his drawing skills were good, much better than many people in the tribe. However, Wu Rol's drawing wasn't just a good drawing. Whether the lines were good or not, it didn't have much to do with Wu Rol. Here. Xiaoxian drew a line on the flames around the horns. This should be the power of inheritance, right? Very good, this is indeed the power of inheritance. The shaman said with satisfaction. The shaman was about to say something else, but Xiaoxian continued, and here too, here too. Wait, let me take a closer look. The shaman's words were stuck in his throat. Every time Xiaoxian drew a line, the shaman's face couldn't help but twitch. As Xiaoxian drew more and more, the shaman's expression became more and more strange. His eyes were filled with both joy and sadness, and other complicated emotions. If it were someone else, they would have suspected that they were fooled, but the shaman knew that Xiaoxian was telling the truth. With so much power of inheritance, with such talent, he actually wanted to become a warrior. The shaman couldn't wait to kowtow in front of the fire pit where his ancestors were cremated. Ancestors, tell me, why didn't such a person become a shaman? If it were some hot-tempered shaman in the past, he probably would have chased after Xiaoxian with his walking stick and beaten him up. Xiaoxian compared the blue flames on the totem flames in his mind with the ones drawn on the animal skin scroll, then looked up at the shaman and said, that's all. That's all? The shaman gripped his walking stick tightly, feeling all kinds of emotions. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Xiaoxian really didn't think it was a lot. Because, among the flames around the horns, the blue flames did indeed occupy a very small proportion. Xiaoxian only heard the shaman say that most people didn't have much power of inheritance, but he didn't know what kind of not much the shaman meant, so he drew all of this. If he knew the shaman's standard, he would definitely hold back. The shaman stared at the totem drawing of the power of inheritance on the animal skin scroll and didn't say anything. Just as Xiaoxian was wondering what was wrong with the shaman said in a slightly heavy tone, very good, this way it will be easier for you to draw. Xiao Xian listened attentively to the shaman's explanation of the Wu roll drawing method. The Wu roll drawing is actually the combination of the power of inheritance, the consciousness, and the drawing. The three of them have reached a state of integration. When the viewer was able to use the power of inheritance and become one with the painting that carried the consciousness, they would be able to interact with the consciousness of the painter. If they could control it accurately, the viewer would even be able to feel the emotions and other feelings of the painter. The extent of this interaction is related to the painter's foundation and the viewer's ability. The more profound the painter's foundation, the stronger the viewer's ability, and the clearer the interaction. The shaman explained the theory to Xiao Xian. If he wanted to draw the Wu roll, he had to understand all of this. When the shaman was almost done, Xiao Xian also took note of the shaman's words and understood most of it. Only then did he pick up the brush again and start his first Wu roll drawing. For those who were drawing the Wu roll for the first time, they would first practice by copying the Wu roll. This was because when copying the drawings on the Wu roll, there would be a guiding force that would make it easier for the person copying. Xiao Xian carefully looked at one of the drawings on the Wu roll, then put all of his attention on the animal skin scroll on the table in front of him. The moment before the tip of the brush touched the animal skin scroll, Xiao Xian had already activated the power of inheritance in his body and started to draw according to the shaman's instructions. At this moment, Xiao Xian poured all of his power of inheritance and all of his energy into the only point that the tip of the brush touched. He immersed himself in this only goal, and started to slowly move the brush along the guidance of the original Wu roll. After finishing one stroke, Xiao Xian was already sweating profusely. He had used up almost all of his energy and felt like he was about to collapse. He was breathing heavily. Looking at the animal skin scroll again, it was only a small circle. Lifting his sleeve to wipe his sweat, Xiao Xian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Drawing the Wu roll is so difficult. It's only one stroke, and it even looks like a simple circle, but it's so difficult to start from the beginning. It's full of difficulties. Sure enough, is it because the power of inheritance is not enough? Xiao Xian thought to himself. If the shaman knew what Xiao Xian was thinking at this moment, he probably wouldn't be able to stop himself from hitting him with his walking stick. When he first started copying, it was just a small d, and he had to pause 3 times in the middle. Xiao Xian was able to complete it on his first try. Even in the past, not many shamans could do it. Chapter 104. In the past, Xiao Xian would never believe that he had only drawn one circle in the morning, and he was so tired that he was about to collapse. But now, he personally felt that drawing a circle could be so tiring, and it was even mentally exhausting. When he walked out of the stone house and looked at the surrounding scenery, Xiao Xian felt that the house in his field of vision seemed to be spinning. He looked up at the sky for a while and felt better. He was no longer dizzy and could stand steadily. Xiao Xian carried the stone box that the shaman gave him and went to the medicine house to help Guizhe process the herbs. He didn't know what the shaman said to Guizhe, but when Xiao Xian taught her, she didn't ask too much. She just learned seriously and improved some of the ways to process herbs. Compared to drawing with Wu roll, processing herbs was much easier. When he went down the mountain, Xiao Xian had recovered from his tiredness. In the stone box that the shaman gave him, there were 2 animal skin scrolls, the shaman's special paint, and a writing brush. The shaman didn't have time to teach Xiao Xian every day. Most of the time, Xiao Xian had to practice by himself. The stone box was covered with a grass net, so when Xiao Xian carried it back, it was still shaking. "What is this?" Old Ku asked when he saw Xiao Xian come back with a stone box. "It's a task assigned by the shaman." Although the shaman provided materials for Xiao Xian to practice, he didn't want him to waste them. When he practiced, he had to show them to the shaman. This was also a task assigned by the shaman. When Old Ku heard Xiao Xian's words, he suddenly felt a sense of awe. He even looked at the stone box with great respect. He didn't dare to look at it. Since Xiaofan wanted to draw, he didn't ask any more questions. In his opinion, whatever the shaman did was right and meaningful. Don't let the shaman down, Old Ku said solemnly. Back in his room, Xiaofan took out the animal skin scroll. There were 2 animal skin scrolls in the stone box. One of them had not been scribbled at all, while the other was the one he had practiced this morning. There was even a circle on it. Opening the animal skin roll, Xiaofan took out the paints and brushes. After thinking for a while, he took out the charcoal pencil he had made, intending to try it out. However, just as Xiaofan was about to activate his power of inheritance, he quickly flicked his wrist and moved the charcoal pencil away. The charcoal pencil broke into many small pieces and scattered on the stone table. If Xiaofan hadn't moved away quickly, these scattered pieces would have fallen directly into the animal skin roll. Sure enough, not every pen used to draw Wu roll was suitable. The brush that the shaman gave Xiaofan was made of ferocious beast hair and special wood. Giving up on using other brushes, Xiaofan picked up the one the shaman gave him and continued to draw. Since it was practice, he naturally started with the drawing he had done this morning. With his first attempt, he became more proficient in drawing the second time. He still didn't draw quickly. When Xiaofan finished drawing the circle, he realized that it was already dark. At least an hour had passed. Compared to the morning, the drawing time was not much shorter. However, this time, Xiaofan was not as tired as he was in the morning. The dizziness was also not as strong. This was an improvement. For the next few days, Xiaofan would bring the stone box to the shaman's place in the morning. However, the shaman was busy these days. After Xiaofan went over, he would sit in a small room in the stone house and practice. If he had any questions, he would ask the shaman when he was free. The shaman didn't even have time to see the results of Xiaofan's practice. 5 days later, winter officially arrived. The temperature plummeted overnight. When Xiaofan opened the door in the morning, all he saw was white. In the big bird's nest on the roof, Cha-Cha was stretching its neck to look down. When it saw Xiaofan come out, it flapped its wings, shook off the snow on its body, and flew up. Cha-Cha slept outside, not because Xiaofan forced it to. When winter was coming, Cha-Cha had no intention of hiding in the house. Now that it was snowing heavily, it didn't hide either. Since it could withstand this kind of weather, Xiaofan didn't care. After all, Cha-Cha was not a pet bird in a greenhouse. If it flew to the forest one day, it would also have to endure this kind of weather. It couldn't be pampered. Caesar and Cha-Cha followed Xiaofan up the mountain. When they were about to reach the top, Caesar went down the mountain by himself, while Cha-Cha flew to other places to look for food. Just by looking at this point, these two were well trained. When Xiaofan arrived at the stone house, Ta and Gigu, the 2 team leaders of the hunting group, were already there. Xiaofan didn't want to disturb them, so he bowed to them and went inside with the stone box. He went to the small room to continue practicing the Wu roll painting. The 2 team leaders only knew that the shaman was teaching Xiaofan something about herbs. They felt that Xiaofan was really a lucky kid. For people in the tribe, it was a great honor to be able to learn from the shaman. They would never have guessed what Xiaofan was really learning. Xiaofan opened the animal skin roll, but didn't start painting immediately. When he came in, he heard the 2 team leaders apologizing. In the past year, some of the herbs they found were not what they needed. It was just that many herbs and plants looked similar, so it was not easy to identify them. Even though they had drawn pictures on the animal skin roll, there were still mistakes in what the advance group brought back every time. For example, some of the herbs and plants Gigu brought back from the last hunting trip had to be removed. This was a communication gap. The shaman couldn't tell the warriors in detail what he said. It was just words, without a real picture, and without a practical operation, so the communication was greatly reduced. It wasn't their fault. After all, not everyone could understand the Wu roll like Xiaoxian. It would be great if everyone could understand the shaman volumes one day. Thinking of this, Xiaoxian raised his eyes and looked at the stone table in front of him. There was an unfinished Wu roll on the table. Xiaoxian took it and looked at it. The content surprised him. It was about farming, but unfortunately, Xiaoxian couldn't see the picture clearly through these pictures. This was a copy of the ancient scroll. No one knew how many times it had been copied, and the original consciousness of the first painter had been blurred. When copying an ancient scroll, because it wasn't seen with one's own eyes, it was equivalent to reading someone else's description, and then retelling it. The retelling would inevitably add some subjective consciousness. It was like a sentence, passed from one person to another. The meaning wouldn't change much, but after being passed by many people, what would it become in the end? 99% of the time, the original words would be changed. Although some things could be seen from the transcribed version of the ancient scroll, it was not as clear as the original version, but there was an increased sense of fuzziness. Just like the one in front of him, the shaman didn't personally experience farming, so naturally, he couldn't understand the wishes of the original painter. The one that was left behind should be a copy of a previous shaman's copy. Since the shaman left it here, it meant that he didn't mean to hide it from Xiaoxian. Xiaoxian looked at the animal skin scroll for a while. Although it wasn't clear, he could still be sure that the picture drawn was not of any place in the tribe. The Wu roll was more like a plain area, with vast farmland and fertile soil. He couldn't see what was being planted, but he could see some vague figures working in the fields. Unfortunately, the area where the tribe was now was not suitable for farming, and the people in the tribe didn't have the intention to do so. There were some edible plants in the mountains around the training ground, which was enough for the people in the tribe. The shaman didn't know how long he would have to wait to see the scene drawn in the animal skin scroll. He left this copy probably because he wanted Xiaoxian to look forward to it. For every person in the tribe, that scene was indeed shocking. Unfortunately, even the shaman didn't expect Xiaoxian to be so special. Putting the animal skin scroll aside, Xiaoxian continued his practice. Now he wasn't copying the Wu roll, but drawing by himself. What he wanted to draw now was a plant he saw in the green field. After mulling over it for a while, he put down his brush and painstakingly finished the drawing. Looking at the animal skin roll, it was really difficult to connect the runes drawn on the animal skin roll with the plant in the green space. The lines were twisted like earthworms. However, aesthetics were secondary. The most important thing was whether or not he could draw the picture in his sea of consciousness. For Xiaoxian, he had already succeeded. In his previous life, Xiaoxian's archaeology classmate once said, "Prehistoric art is the existence of prehistoric ideology, not aesthetic or aesthetic ideology." At that time, Xiaoxian didn't understand, but now, he seemed to understand a lot. The creator of the Wu roll was just drawing in the real world. With the help of the power of inheritance, he drew his consciousness in the form of drawing. That was all. It had nothing to do with beauty or ugliness. Thinking of this, Xiaoxian felt a lot better. Looking at the picture he just drew, Xiaoxian thought, if I showed this to the archaeologists in my previous life, they wouldn't know what I drew. Chapter 105. In the afternoon, when Xiaoxian left the medicine house, it was still early in the morning. There were not many herbs to be processed, and there was not much work to be done recently, so Xiaoxian planned to go down the mountain early, and practice his Wu roll drawing when he got back. However, after walking for a short while, Xiaoxian stopped and listened carefully. He lifted his foot and turned towards the direction of the sound. Between the mountainside and the top of the mountain, there was a special place. It was a training ground specially opened by the warriors. However, this training ground was not for the warriors, but for the children on the mountainside and the top of the mountain who had not awakened their totem power. The children on the mountain began to receive training very early, and this was their main training ground. However, the space was limited, and sometimes they had to clear the place for throwing. If there were too many people, they would be easily hurt by the wooden or stone tools thrown out. The children here were all children who had not awakened their totem power, and their abilities were limited. Most of the people who could train here were from the noble families on the mountain. Their elders held important positions in the tribe, and were at least the leaders of the hunting teams. Otherwise, they would not be able to find a place to move around, and would be excluded. Everywhere, there was a competition of fathers. Xiaofan had never been there for training before. Later, when he awakened his totem power, he passed by the training ground once when he went down the mountain, and just watched from a short distance. It was winter, and snow was falling heavily. In such weather, there were many noises coming from the training ground, and it sounded like there were quite a lot of people there. As he walked towards the training ground, the noises became clearer and clearer. Compared to the foot of the mountain, the main roads were cleared every day in winter, no matter how heavy the snow was. Some of the children who had not awakened their totem power would come out wrapped in thick animal skins. Most of them did not lack food, and the animal skins they wore were of good quality. Even if it was cold, it would not be life-threatening. Following the cleared path, Xiaofan came to the kid training ground. There were nearly 100 people in the training ground, from 5 or 6 years old to new warriors who had awakened their totem power for 1 or 2 years. Because they could not withstand the cold like totem warriors, the children in the training ground, who had not awakened their totem power, were all wrapped up like rice dumplings. At this moment, there were 3 children in the middle of the crowd. Xiaofan recognized 2 of them. That was Yang Guang from Xiaomai's family. Yang Guang was the name of these 2 people. Xiao and Mai were twins. Yang was a boy and was born earlier than his sister, Guang. There were very few twins in the tribe. At present, Yang Guang was the only twin in the tribe. It was said that when Yang Guang was born, the shaman went to see him in person. Yang Guang was 1 year younger than Xiaofan, and he hadn't awakened his totem power yet. However, both of them had good potential. After the end of this winter, my plan to let them join the preliminary team and send them to the shaman. Many people in the tribe knew that Guang from Xiaomai's family was born with great strength. She would definitely awaken her totem power in the future, but she was not easy to get along with. Compared to Guang, as the elder brother, Yang was not so outstanding. However, he had a good temper and did not quarrel with others. Every time when Guang fought with others, he would go up and stop them. The 2 siblings had very different personalities. Of course, this was only the version that was heard. As a person who had a good relationship with Xiaomai's family, Xiaofan naturally knew that the real situation was very different from the rumors in the tribe. As the younger sister, Guang was born with great strength. She could fight against 2 people at once before awakening her totem power. This was a fact. However, it was not true that she was impulsive, irritable, and liked to fight. The tribe treated girls differently from boys. If a boy was punched by a girl, people would say, "Ah, being punched by a girl won't make you lose a piece of meat." But what if it was the other way around? What a bastard! How dare he? Needless to say, the boy's parents would teach him a lesson in person. It was not that there was any gentlemanly behavior here. That was all bullshit. Here, it was because the successive shamans attached great importance to the protection of girls. After all, it was related to the tribe's reproduction and future. The ratio of men to women in the tribe was not equal. Every year, there were fewer girls than boys. For this reason, the successive shamans were worried to death. If there were other tribes nearby, they could just kidnap a girl from outside to be their wife. However, the tribe was almost isolated now. Excluding those who were close to them by blood, there were even fewer people who could be found. Now there were many old bachelors in the tribe. If old Ku had not been injured in the past, he might have already had grandchildren. This was also why every time they walked on the path of glory, the returning young warriors were like peacocks spreading their tails, showing off themselves and their prey. It was precisely because of this difference in treatment in the tribe that every time there was a problem that needed to be solved by force, or if there was someone who was extremely unpleasant to the eye, the one who would charge forward was Guang. As the elder brother, Yang would pull his sister from behind and shout, "Stop fighting, sorry, Guang is too impulsive," and so on. For example, Guang and Guang were having a dispute with another party. Guang was using both her hands and legs to fight the people in front of her, but her brother Yang was holding her back, so she couldn't kick him several times. However, she also succeeded a few times. Otherwise, how did the footprints on the other side come about? Yang pulled his sister and seemed to be dissuading her. However, when someone from the other side stood up to speak, Guang kicked him. She did not kick him, but she scraped his animal skin clothes. The person who just stood up retreated. Yang really couldn't hold her back. Who was he kidding? These two people's strength was actually about the same. If they really wanted to dissuade her, it was impossible that they couldn't hold her back. Yang Guang was not old, and did not have the honest character of Xiaomai and his wife. Instead, he was mischievous. The day before, he learned some simple rope traps from Xiaoxian, and the next day, he could go out and trap people. Seeing that there were people on the other side who had awakened their totemic power and were about to stand up, Xiaoxian spoke first, "Guang Guang." The people on the other side all looked over. After seeing Xiaoxian, Guang's originally angry face suddenly turned into a smile. She broke free from her brother's pull and ran towards Xiaoxian. Because she was wearing too much, and even covered with a cloak, she looked like a moving dumpling when she ran over. When Guang saw Xiaoxian, it was as if she had found a backer. She pulled Xiaoxian's arm and said, "Brother Xian, they hit me." The few people who had been kicked by Guang wanted to spit out blood. Bullshit. Bullshit. Anyone with eyes could see who was the victim. When the people on the scene saw Xiaoxian, they all had different expressions. The younger ones were not sensible, and did not care much about Xiaoxian. But the older ones were different, especially those who had awakened their totemic power in the same batch as Xiaoxian. Not to mention that Xiaoxian had made great contributions in the past year, and had joined the advance group. Even now, Xiaoxian was still learning things from the shaman. In their eyes, this was a shining halo. Therefore, even if Xiaoxian could not come over and compete with his father, and was born in the cave, no one dared to ask him to leave. Ku, who was standing behind the crowd, felt even more complicated. He was also from the cave, and at this time last year, he was the most envied person in the cave. But now, when they talked about Xiaoxian, how did it feel? In just 1 year, he had changed so much. Chapter 106. After listening to Yang Guang's explanation, Xiaoxian understood the cause and effect of this quarrel. Although in the eyes of many people at the foot of the mountain, a small leader of a hunting group was already very powerful, Xiaomai's family was not really that powerful here. As far as Xiaoxian knew, there were a lot of kids who had a say in the tribe. Their parents were at least at the level of a small group leader. Not only that, but their grandfather's generation and above had all held important positions in the tribe, such as the chief and hunting team leaders. Some of them even had a few shamans in their ancestors. The accumulated advantages were very obvious, and their status in the tribe was also higher than others. In contrast, Xiaomai's family was at most a new noble family with no background here. Yang Guang and Xiaoxian rarely came to this training ground since they were born. Usually, they would be taken to the warrior training ground by Xiaomai and his wife. Many children on the mountain had the same experience. They were protected by someone, so they would not get hurt in the training ground of totem warriors. In winter, Yang Guang did not want to go out in the winter, because he was still young and did not want to go out. Therefore, he did not come to this training ground with others. Yang Guang and Xiao Xian only knew the children of other warriors in Mai's hunting group. They were not familiar with many people on the mountain. However, this winter, Ang Guang and Xiao Xian decided to do some good training, so that they could awaken their totem power by the end of this winter. However, they did not know the situation in the training ground, and the rules here. Since it was a training ground specially for children who had not awakened their totem power, the adults would not interfere. Whether it was the management or the rules here, they were all set by the children who had not awakened their totem power. Even the ancestors were once children, and many of the rules they set were still in use today. And the rule here was, if you want to come here to train? Sure, but you have to hang your name first. The so-called hanging name was to hang the stone card with your name on the tall stone tree next to the training ground. Only after hanging it up, you were qualified to enter the training ground. When Xiao Xian first saw the stone tree beside the training ground, he thought it was a telephone pole. However, when he got closer and touched it with his hand, he realized that it wasn't. It really was a tree. This stone tree had a very long history, perhaps a few hundred years. It was said that it had been here since the training ground was built, but it grew very slowly. It was hard to tell how much it had grown even after more than 10 years. Their ancestors had left this tree behind, and it later became the deciding factor for these children to enter the training grounds. The stone tree was as thick as 2 people and was nearly 50 meters tall. It was thin and long, and only the top part of it had branches. Most of the bottom part was bare. In other seasons, newcomers would climb up the tree and hang their stone card with their name on a branch. Until one day, when they awakened their totemic power and became warriors, they would take down their cards and officially leave the training ground. This was equivalent to a ritual that had been going on for hundreds of years. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem for Yang Guang. Although the stone tree looked like a stone, the surface of the trunk was as rough as bark. It wasn't too difficult for them to climb it. Originally, under special circumstances, they could make an exception. For example, in this kind of weather, it was impossible to climb. However, today's situation was a bit coincidental. Today, 2 groups of people were going to compete. The winner would be able to train in the training ground for the next 20 days, and the loser would have to leave immediately. This kind of competition actually happened every winter, because at this time, many people on the mountain were preparing for the awakening. In order to be in the best condition for the preliminaries before the end of winter, they would try their best to get training time in the training ground. This was the only place on the mountain that was relatively spacious and suitable for throwing and other training. There was a large open space at the foot of the mountain, but unfortunately, they didn't want to go down the mountain. Moreover, this training ground had become a symbol of status. Being able to come here, even if it was just for show, would make them very happy. For example, Ku was brought here last year, but he didn't have a card, so he couldn't enter. He could only watch from the side. Because of this, Ku often bragged to the people at the foot of the mountain. Originally, the training schedule was that everyone would take turns. The first 10 days, one person would use the training ground, and the next 10 days, they would take turns. But at this point, it was a battle of whose fist was harder. For tribesmen, the way to solve problems was naturally to compete. In the tribe, many people thought that it was necessary for children to compete with each other, and they also agreed with this method. No matter which side would use the training ground at this time, everyone's thought was, anyway, we want to train now. Will you give up the place? Or not? Come on, let's fight. If you win, you're right. If you lose, you're wrong. If you're right, you're wrong. In this training ground, fighting for territory had to be decided in such a direct way. Every time this happened, both sides would ask their relatives and friends to help, including the awakened totem warriors. Xiaoxian saw Mao, Mor, and the others. But usually, they wouldn't do anything, and just watched from the side. The two sides had different families. They were either from Ta's hunting group, or from Gigu's group. Just at this time, Yang Guang and his sister came over and said they wanted to join. As they were on the same side, Xiaoxian naturally chose to accommodate them. But the other side didn't agree. They used the rules of their ancestors, and didn't want to give up. Yang Guang and his sister couldn't hold back, and kicked someone. The kid who was kicked in the face by Guang just now mocked Yang Guang and his sister. They must be afraid of heights. After learning the whole story, Xiaoxian looked at the stone tree. Different from other trees, there was a thick layer of ice on the surface of the stone tree. It was quite difficult to hang a stone card with one's name on the top of the tree without damaging it. Even for totem warriors, it was not easy to climb up. Xiaoxian looked at Yang Guang and his sister, who were wrapped up like fat rice dumplings, and then looked at the 50-meter-tall tree. Xiaoxian estimated that they would slide down the frozen trunk as soon as they jumped up, not to mention climbing up. "Can't we use stone tools?" Xiaoxian asked. "No. That will damage the stone tree, but we don't restrict the rope." The one who spoke was about the same age as Yang Guang and his sister. He sounded a little arrogant, and there was a sense of gloominess between his eyebrows. After saying that, Meng Guang and Guang Guang smiled sinisterly at them. His expression seemed to be saying, "Aren't you strong? Then throw it. His name is Meng. He is bad. He is the one who doesn't allow us to enter." Yang Guang complained to Xiaoxian. In such weather, with the cold wind and snow, many people who had not yet awakened their power were shivering. Some people thought that since Yang Guang and his sister could not do it, they might as well give up. They still wanted to watch today's competition. It was not a good idea to stand here in the cold. "So, what do you want to do now?" Xiaoxian looked at Yang Guang and his sister. Both of them looked frustrated. Even if they had a lot of ideas, they could not think of any solution at this time. "Actually, we can put this matter aside for now. After we finish the competition, this place will belong to us for the next 20 days. Yang Guang can also train here." Mao walked over and said. Hearing Mao's words, a person behind Meng sneered, "You talk as if you are very powerful." Seeing that the two sides were about to quarrel again, Xiaoxian shook his head. The competition between the two sides was one thing, but the qualification to enter the competition was still a hot topic. "Actually, it is not difficult," Xiaoxian said. Hearing Xiaoxian's words, the people around who were about to quarrel all turned their heads to look at him. Not difficult? Was he bragging? Not only Meng's people, but also Mao and the others looked at Xiaoxian in confusion. They did not understand why Xiaoxian would say that. "Can't we use stone tools?" Xiaoxian asked again. "No," Meng said. "Can't we ask others for help?" "No. Except for that, we can ask others for help?" "Yes. That's easy." After saying that, Xiaoxian put his finger into his mouth and blew a whistle in front of hundreds of people. Chapter 107. The whistle spread far and wide in the wind and snow. Hearing Xiaoxian's whistle, some people were still confused. They didn't understand what Xiaoxian was trying to do. Others thought of something and their expressions changed. They looked up at the sky. "Ah!" Yang Guang and his sister shouted in surprise. They already knew what Xiaoxian was trying to do. They opened their eyes wide and looked at the sky. Even when the snow fell into their eyes, they just wiped it away hurriedly. After that, they continued staring, afraid that they would miss something. "What's going on?" Meng turned his head and asked the people behind him. "That eagle," Meng looked in the direction that the other person was pointing at and looked at a certain spot in the sky. A small black dot appeared in the sky. Soon, the dot became bigger and bigger. Even the falling snow couldn't cover its figure as it flew over. Cha-cha. It's cha-cha. Yang Guang and his sister were so happy that they wanted to jump a few times. Because they knew Xiaofan, they knew a little about cha-cha. The others all had their own thoughts. To many people in the tribe, cha-cha was just like Caesar. They only had the permission of the shaman to move around in the tribe. Many people even thought that such prey had lost its sharpness in the forest. They didn't care about it. Even without the permission of the shaman, they might not take the initiative to hunt it. Just like the mentality of most warriors, hunting was more meaningful. For them, an animal that was no longer fierce was enough to be ignored. They often saw the eagle flying around in the sky, but they never thought deeply about what it could do. It wasn't that they were stupid. It was just that hundreds of years of thinking and views made them unable to think in that direction. Including Yang Guang and his sister. Cha-cha hovered high in the sky but didn't land. Xiaofan raised his hand and made a gesture. Then, everyone saw the eagle in the sky fly towards Xiaofan. It's so far. That bird can actually see his hand movements? Someone sighed softly. My father said that eagles can see rabbits very far away. Another person said. Amazing. Then it can also see danger from afar? If it can really see danger, then father and the others wouldn't have to take the risk. Someone said. The discussion in the surroundings suddenly stopped. That's right. If it can see danger from afar and give it a warning in advance, when they go out hunting, they can avoid some unnecessary trouble. Everyone thought. But they still didn't think that a beast could do that. It wasn't a human and couldn't speak. It was just a bird that could fly. Whoosh! A black figure flashed past, and even the surrounding snowflakes were forcefully changed direction. Everyone looked. Following the sound of wings flapping, Cha-cha landed on Xiaofan's outstretched arm. Cha-cha didn't have stage fright even with so many people around. Its eagle eyes swept around and then it pecked at its feathers. Xiaofan lowered his arm so that Yang Guang and his sister could talk to Cha-cha better. Cha-cha, help me hang this on that tree. There are branches at the top of the tree. Any branch will do. Yang Guang and his sister took out the stone card in their hands and said to Cha-cha. The stone card wasn't big. It was less than half the size of their palms. It was tied with a leather string. Many children in the mountains had such a stone card. Some were prepared when they were born and some were written later. Even if many people didn't know how to use such a stone card, they would make one for themselves when they saw others making one. The stone card was made of medium to high-quality stones. The leather string was also made of ferocious beast skin. It wouldn't break easily. While Yang Guang and his sister were holding the stone card and talking to Cha-cha, the others were also staring at them. Most of them still didn't believe it. Seeing that Yang Guang and his sister were talking to Cha-cha like that, they couldn't believe it. Can it understand? The beasts in the mountains are also very smart. Even if it can understand, can it do what it says? It can't be, right? My father said that the birds in the mountains are very ferocious. How can it be obedient? Some people were whispering to each other about their understanding of the eagle. When they turned their heads, they saw Yang Guang and Guang Guang reach out to touch the eagle. Everyone stopped talking and stared at the eagle. Cha-cha was a little impatient. Every time they touched it. Seeing Cha-cha pecking at Yang Guang and his sister's hands, everyone's heart was in their throat. Even Meng and many other young totem warriors were staring at them without blinking. Those who had hunted before naturally knew how ferocious this kind of bird was. The man who was kicked by Guang just now was still laughing in his heart. Look, he was pecked. It was said that a peck from an eagle could cut off a piece of meat. However, to everyone's surprise, the brother and sister who were pecked didn't have any wounds on their hands. Sure enough, this bird was raised to the point that it didn't even know how to peck. Its soft pecking was simply incomparable to those eagles in the mountains. Some people suddenly showed a look of disdain. Until a man next to Mao approached Cha-Cha with a wooden stick. He wanted to touch it but didn't dare, so he had to use the stick to test it. As a result, before the stick could get close, Cha-Cha flapped his wings and pecked at the stick with all his strength. Tut! That man only felt that his hand holding the stick was a little numb. He looked at the place where the stick was pecked, and there was a hole on it. If the stick wasn't thick enough, it would have been pecked through. Now, no one said anything. If anyone didn't believe it, they could try it with their hands. However, no one was a fool. Cha-Cha still wanted to attack the man who stretched out the stick, but was stopped by Xiaofan. Unauthorized people will be attacked if they come close, Xiaofan said. At this time, Yang Guang and his sister had finished talking with Cha-Cha. They handed over the stone card in their hands. The two stone cards were stacked together with a leather rope. They even rubbed together to make it look like a rope. Cha-Cha, if you can help me, I will ask my father for some ferocious beast meat for you when we go back. Guang said. Go. Xiaofan raised his arm. Cha-Cha exerted force on its claws and flapped its wings. When it flew up, it grabbed Yang Guang and his sister's stone card. In the blink of an eye, it had spread its wings and was in the sky. Xiaofan had done similar training before, and it was even more difficult than this. Therefore, the task of hanging Yang Guang and his sister's stone card on the branch at the top of the stone tree was quite simple for Cha-Cha. Xiaofan wasn't worried. At the side of the training ground, everyone looked at the eagle flying towards the stone tree. While everyone was thinking about when it would slow down and what to do when it got close to the tree, Cha-Cha didn't slow down. It flew past the branch at the top of the stone tree like the wind. Many people didn't see Cha-Cha's movements clearly. In their eyes, the eagle just flew past the tree quickly and didn't do anything. It didn't do as we said. Someone said. It seemed that it should be like this, but there was also an indescribable disappointment. No, it has already hung the stone card. The person standing behind Meng said. After all, totem warriors were different from unawakened people. Their eyesight was also much better. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone heard a ding sound from above. It was the sound of the stone card hitting the ice on the branch. After the stone card was hung, it would slide down along the tip of the branch. In this kind of weather, soon the leather rope on the stone card would be covered by the ice, just like the other stone cards. No matter how strong the wind was, it wouldn't be blown off. When winter ended, the ice layer on the branches would melt, and grayish-white leaves would grow from the tips. These leaves would also prevent the wind from blowing the stone tablet off. Therefore, unless someone deliberately went up to take the stone tablet off, generally speaking, no matter how strong the wind, it would be very difficult to blow the stone tablet off from the top. Meng's expression kept changing. How could they use such a method? But it didn't violate the rules. They had never thought about it, and had always thought that wild beasts and ferocious beasts were used to hunt, and were in a state of opposition to humans. Why were wild beasts so obedient? Caesar was like that, and even this eagle was like that too. Among the people present, some people looked at the eagle that returned to Xiaofan's arm thoughtfully. When they couldn't do it, when they racked their brains and couldn't come up with a perfect solution, they didn't know that it could be done this way. Chapter 108. After completing the task, Xiaofan let Cha-Cha, who was already impatient, fly away. Speaking of which, Xiaofan took advantage of the loophole in the rules, which was a bit of a bully. However, the current situation was a bit special. The other party was forcing them to do something they didn't want to do. In the past, they would just bend the rules directly. Under such circumstances, no one could climb up the stone tree. At the same time, Xiaofan also knew Yang Guang and his sister well. Although they had Cha-Cha's help now, they would still climb up once the ice on the stone tree melted after winter. Even if they only climbed up to touch the stone card, it would make them feel at ease. Only then would they be justified. Sure enough, after Cha-Cha flew away, looking at Meng's gloomy face, Guang snorted, "After winter ends, if we don't awaken, we will climb up again. Just you wait." Yang nodded at the side, "I will climb too." Although Cha-Cha had flown away, the situation just now had left a deep impression in many people's minds. It didn't matter how much it affected them. If they encountered similar situations in the future, they might remember it again. Children's ability to accept things was stronger than adults. Changing one's mind naturally started from a young age. Moreover, after this winter ended, Xiaofan planned to bring Caesar out for the next year's hunt. He also hoped that everyone would gradually accept this method. In the pictures drawn by the ancestors of the tribe, there were also scenes of hunting with hunting dogs. Perhaps one day, such a grand scene would appear again. The witch's attitude was the same. "Alright, since the matter is settled, I'll go back," Xiaofan said to Yang Guang and his sister. "Don't go. Brother Xian, we still have a duel later. I want to fight," Guang said. When the people on Meng's side heard this, they immediately started shouting. "Guang, you're not allowed to fight." "That's right, you can ask Yang to do it." "Yes, yes, yes. Yang, how could you let your sister participate in the battle?" Previously, they had deliberately made things difficult for Yang Guang and his sister. One reason was that both sides were fighting for territory, and they wanted to discuss the other. Another important reason was that Guang was very strong, and she was a girl. If she were to fight, Mongols would not be able to find a suitable candidate. Now that someone told Yang to come, they all shouted in response. Xiaofan looked at this group of kids and laughed in his heart. This group of silly children, they were still aware that they had been deceived by the two siblings. Just now, when someone had asked for Yang to come, the two siblings couldn't help but smile. 2 out of 3 matches, each side would send out 3 people. Xiaofan, Mao, and the others were standing aside and watching. The fight between kids who hadn't awakened their totemic power was very simple. They were not allowed to use stone tools, and fought with their bare hands. They had learned all their moves from their elders. However, because they had never hunted before, their strength was not high enough, and they were wearing thick clothes, their momentum was naturally much weaker. Xiaofan looked at the kids on the field. Because they were wearing too much, they looked like 2 fat dumplings bumping into each other. Xiaofan almost laughed out loud. However, for these kids, this was a very serious matter. Xiaofan also kept a straight face. Just as Xiaofan had expected, after Yang went on the field, he had thrown his opponent to the ground 3 times in less than 2 breaths. The 4th time, he directly pressed his opponent to the ground and beat him until he admitted defeat. It seemed that Yang had been suppressing his anger for a long time, and now he wanted to vent it out. Looking at the expressions of the people around, except for those who already knew what would happen, the others were all very excited. In the end, Meng was the only one who won 1 match, and lost the other 2. They didn't need to come for the next 20 days. There was one good thing about the children in the tribe. After they lost, they wouldn't find too many excuses, and they wouldn't deliberately trip others up. Wherever they fell, they would get up again. If they lost, they would fight back the next time. Yang Guang, his sister, and the others were cheering, and they were even discussing how many stone tools they would bring tomorrow. The young warriors were also about to leave. However, when Xiaofan was about to leave, someone on the other side said, "Wait." "What?" What do you want to say after losing? Do you want to fight in person, Lei? Mao said sarcastically. The Lei mentioned by Mao was the one who had been standing behind Meng just now. Lei awakened his totemic power a year earlier than the others, and he was older than Xiaofan and Mao when he awakened his totemic power. All in all, he was 2 years older than Xiaofan. He was also the best warrior among the group of people who awakened their totemic power that year, and he brought back the most praise. He had awakened his totemic power for 2 years, and he was already older than Xiaofan, so now he was even taller than Xiaofan by a head. Lei just glanced at Mao casually. If I fight in person, do you think you can beat me? He said that with disdain, as if he was bullying unawakened kids. Before Mao could refute, Lei moved his eyes away, and looked at Xiaofan. I have someone here who wants to talk with Xian. Usually Xian is learning herbs from the shaman, so it's hard to find him. Since we met today, why don't we practice our skills? It's also a good chance to show the unawakened ones what a totemic warrior level competition is like. When Lei said totemic warrior level, his tone was full of pride. Not only Lei, but the others were also excited when they heard this. The young totemic warriors wanted to show off, while the unawakened ones were looking forward to it. Their parents' generation was their parents' generation, and their generation had their own competition. As soon as Lei finished his words, someone stood out. Tai. Mao looked at the person who stood out, and frowned. Tai, Xiaofan, and Mao were all awakened in the same batch, but Tai was in another hunting group, so Xiaofan didn't know him well. Tai stretched his wrists, looked at Xiaofan, and said, I heard you are the best in our batch of awakened ones, and I've been wanting to fight with you for a long time. Hearing Tai's words, someone on Mao's side couldn't help but say, how can he be the best in our batch? Shut up. Mao glared at the one who just spoke. He wasn't convinced, but he remembered that Xiaofan did much better than him in the last hunting trip. Besides, if it weren't for Xiaofan, he would have been eaten by the thorn-black wind. His father also told him that he was no match for Xiaofan for the time being. Although it had been half a year since Xiaofan said those words, Mao had been making progress all the time, and he improved faster than most of the kids in the tribe. Because he and Xiaofan were not in the same hunting group, and Xiaofan wasn't in the advance group, neither Mao nor Ta knew about Xiaofan's current strength. Mao didn't believe that Xiaofan hadn't made any progress in the past half a year. Just look at the game he brought back every time. Xian. Mao looked at Xiaofan, wondering what he meant. Xiaofan didn't want to compete with him in this way, but he couldn't refuse. If he made an excuse at this time, he would be regarded as a coward. If someone challenged him, he had to accept it. People in the tribe had always been like this. Since he couldn't refuse, he would accept the challenge. It was a good chance for him to see how powerful the kids in the same batch as him were. Putting down the things in his hands, Xiaofan said to Yang Guang and his sister, help me keep an eye on them. Ever since Tai stepped forward, there was an empty space around him. Xiaofan walked into the field, looking at the kid who was about the same height as him. Tai's eyes flashed with hostility. The cloak he was wearing had already been thrown aside. Wearing a sleeveless animal skin coat on such a cold day, it was hard to tell if he was trying to show off the difference between a totem warrior and an unawakened child, or if he was trying to make it easier for him to move around, or if he was trying to show off his totem patterns during the fight. Showing off the totem tattoos on their arms was indeed one of their hobbies. Tai rotated his arms and wrists, making cracking sounds. With a loud roar, the totemic power in his body instantly pulsed. The totemic patterns that belonged to totemic warriors extended from his face to his exposed neck and extended down to his exposed arms. The totemic patterns were very obvious as well. The flame tattoos extended 5 or 6 centimeters from his shoulders to his arms. Seeing the totem tattoos on Tai's body, many unawakened kids were envious. Every time they compared the totem tattoos on their arms, they could only stand aside and watch. Among the awakened kids in the same batch, Tai's speed of improvement was quite fast. Because Tai always kept a high profile on the mountain, everyone knew about his level. Then, the crowd turned their eyes to the other side of the field. They knew very little about Xiaoxian's current strength since he came out of the cave under the mountain. Unlike Tai, who kept a high profile, Xiaoxian was as quiet as a piece of wood. Chapter 109. The scene looked a little strange. If he didn't know that the two were going to compete, he would have thought that Xiaoxian was asleep. The snow was still falling, and the cold wind was blowing. Some of the unawakened children wrapped themselves in animal skins, but their eyes were fixed on the other side. Tai waited for a long time, but still didn't see any reaction from Xiaoxian. He wondered what Xiaoxian meant. Did he really want to compete with him? Or was he playing with him? Thinking of this, Tai couldn't help but feel a little angry. Ray and the others were also confused. Not taking it seriously? Not in the right state? No, that's not right. Ray's eyes flashed. Aura. When hunting, warriors would have a habitual way of hiding their aura. Before hunting, they couldn't let the prey detect them. Therefore, the warriors would hide their aura. Many of the older warriors had already made it a habit. They would carry this habit with them when they walked, making no sound. In contrast, most of the younger warriors didn't have such a habit. Of course, it wasn't something that could be done just because they wanted to. There was no need to do it deliberately. It was just a habit that was formed naturally after many hunts. Inadvertently, they had already entered the best state. In the past, when the elders in his family practiced with Ray, they were in such a state. There was no fighting spirit, no totem patterns, and they looked careless. But once they attacked, they would instantly kill the enemy. However, that was a habit that only warriors who had hunted for many years had. How long had this person been hunting? It had only been a year since he awakened. Moreover, this person was 2 years younger than him. Thinking of this, Ray's eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. He opened his eyes wide and stared at the other side. He wanted to see if the next development was as he expected. That's enough. Xiaoxian, who was still like a block of wood, said. Originally, Tai was quite angry when he saw Xiaoxian like this. He wanted to say something, but he was a little surprised. However, since Xiaoxian had said so, he didn't care about anything else. However, there was a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart, but he couldn't explain why. As for Xiaoxian, Tai's understanding of him was limited to the discussions of the people in the tribe. For example, he had found his ancestor, he had been accepted into the advance party, and he had raised a wolf and a bird that had no spirit at all. There were also some who said that Xiaoxian was the most outstanding among their batch of awakened, but Tai had always been skeptical about this. How powerful could a person who was about the same age as him, who had awakened at the same time as him, and who came from a cave under the mountain be? He had never heard of Xiaoxian defeating anyone. All right. Tai stomped hard on the ground and rushed towards Xiaoxian. With every step he took, the snow on the ground was blown away by his powerful stomps. Muffled thuds could be heard from the ground due to his powerful stomps. A ferocious aura spread out. The people around could clearly feel the pressure brought by Tai at this moment. It could be seen that Tai's explosive power was indeed astonishing. On the other hand, Xiaoxian was still standing there like a block of wood. He did not put up a defensive posture, nor did he reveal any totem patterns. Was this guy stupid? Everyone was puzzled. Not only the others, but even Tai, who was already swinging his fist at Xiaoxian, was also puzzled. However, since he had already made his move, there was no reason to take it back. No matter what he was thinking, he would fight first. Bang! Fist and flesh collided. What was this? All the emotions in Tai's heart turned into shock. How was this possible? This was the same thought that emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. At this moment, Tai felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He was frozen in place, his hair standing on end. Although the wind was howling in the heavy snow, his back was drenched in sweat. He looked at the palm that blocked his fist. It was about the same size as his palm, and looked normal, but it stopped his fist from moving forward. His line of sight followed the palm that blocked his fist. The palm was covered by an animal skin sleeve, and the arm was not exposed. He could not see how far the totem patterns in front of him had spread. Further up was a face that was already covered with totem patterns. A moment ago, there was no trace of totem patterns, but now, Xiaofan's totem patterns did not spread gradually like Tai's. The totem patterns on his face seemed to have appeared suddenly at that moment. Everyone knew that the totem patterns on the body appeared gradually from the top to the bottom. The speed at which they appeared was closely related to the user's control of totem power. The stronger the control of totem power, the faster the totem patterns would appear. However, the totem patterns on Xiaofan's face appeared without any warning. In an instant, they all appeared. What level of mastery did this person have over the totem power? No one wanted to think too deeply. Tai met Xiaofan's eyes, and his scalp went numb. He looked at Xiaofan's eyes as if he was looking at a ferocious beast that had just bared its fangs and was about to break his arm in the next moment. Retreat. This was the only thought in Tai's mind at the moment. Tai put his feet on the ground and wanted to retreat, but he soon found that he could not retreat. The 5 fingers of the hand that had been blocking the fist had already bent and firmly grasped the fist that he had swung out. Ray, who was standing at the side, closed his eyes. One move to determine the winner. There was no need to continue. He did not know that someone in the tribe had reached such a level. His great-grandfather had once told him that he should have a long-term vision and not just look at the people around him. However, he had never thought that there was anyone in the tribe who was worth paying attention to except the people on the mountain. Now it seemed that he was still too narrow-minded. When he opened his eyes again, the shock on Ray's face had disappeared. Tai, you lost, Ray said calmly. Lost? Tai, who was about to retreat, was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. Yes, he lost. Tai only felt that the hand that held his fist loosened, and he could not withdraw his arm. He regained his freedom again. I lost, Tai said. Tai looked up at the person in front of him again and found that the totem patterns on Xiaofan's face had disappeared completely, as if they had never appeared. The fist that hits the tiger should hit the tiger's head, Xiaofan said. That's right. Ray thought for a moment and said, it's really boring to fight in the tribe. I understand what you mean. Xiaofan looked at Ray. What do you understand? He felt that something was wrong. Ray felt that he had understood Xiaofan's words, so he continued, just like how we walk the road of glory every year, the prey is the best way to measure our ability. The others also showed an expression that said, that's right. Even Tai, who had been a little depressed, immediately felt refreshed. Good. Then let's compete with the prey. Count me in, Ray said. In hunting, it was not always about fighting that one could hunt more prey. There were many other factors. After the adjustment in the first year of awakening, they were already experienced warriors from the second year onwards. They did not need to give in anymore. I want to join, too, Mao said. With Ray and Mao taking the lead, the other young warriors also clamored to join. Xiaofan, who was standing next to them, was speechless. That was not what I meant. Xiaofan originally just wanted to say that instead of fighting with their own people, they might as well go back and practice more. When they went out hunting next year, they could use their killing skills on the prey. In the competition between tribes, because the stone tools were not durable, and the high-quality stone tools were very precious. Except for hunting, they were not willing to take them out. Therefore, when they competed, they only fought with their bare hands. Wooden sticks were only suitable for people who had not awakened yet. It was okay to use such competitions to communicate with each other. They could practice and exercise when they had nothing to do. But if they wanted to compete with each other, it was not necessary. This was Xiao Xian's idea, because the behavior of totem warriors in daily life was completely different from that of hunting with tools. However, Xiao Xian did not expect that his words would be misunderstood like this. These people were so excited that even 10 wild beasts would not be able to pull them back from their thoughts. Since we have decided to compete with the prey, then, should we compete with one prey or quantity? Someone asked. Mao and Lei looked at Xiao Xian at the same time. Xian, since you proposed it, how do you want to compete? Mao asked. Proposed my ass. Xiao Xian raised his hand and rubbed his forehead. If he could, he really wanted to swallow the words he just said and change them to something more straightforward. His words caused so much trouble. What a cheap mouth. However, after thinking about it carefully, this method was actually not bad. It was much better to compete with each other than having a civil war in the tribe. After a year of hunting, the young warriors had matured a lot. They knew that they could not be impulsive in the hunting field. Under this premise, it was also a good thing to strive for better and more prey. Too short a time was definitely not good. It was inevitable that some people would be eager for quick success. Moreover, they belonged to 2 hunting groups, so the environment would affect them. Let's do it for a year. Next winter, we will compete with each other with the results of a year. Xiao Xian said. Mao and Lei also thought it was a good idea. Okay, let's do it for a year. There were too many people who wanted to join, so Lei said, why don't we use animal skin rolls to record the names of those who want to join the competition? I have animal skin. A young warrior took out a piece of animal skin. Where's a pen? Who has a pen? And paint? Mao looked at the people behind him. Use this. Xiao Xian took out a charcoal pencil he made himself and handed it over. What is this? Can you write? Someone asked. It was the first time for many people to see Xiao Xian's charcoal pencil, but Mao used to be in the same hunting group as Xiao Xian, so he knew how to use it. Taking the charcoal pencil, Mao wrote his name on the animal skin roll. After that, he handed the pencil to Xiao Xian. When Xiao Xian finished, the pencil was snatched away by Lei. He grabbed the pencil like a stone knife and wrote his name. After that, the other warriors also scrambled to write their names. In the end, all the totem warriors present, including Moer, Ku, and the others, wrote down their names and joined the year-long competition. Like Moer, there were many people who were not interested in fighting. However, they felt that it was better to compete with prey. Yangguang, and some others who had not yet awakened their powers, or who might awaken their powers after the end of this winter, were all eager to have a try. However, they could only stand aside, because Lei and Mao would not allow them to join the competition. Newly awakened warriors would have a long time to adjust and adapt at the beginning. Everyone didn't want them to be too impatient and disregard the rules of the hunting team, such as Hoodlum, who had almost caused trouble. Therefore, the group of fat dumplings could only stand by the side, wrapped in thick animal skins, and glared angrily. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.